Hello, magical souls, and welcome back to Grimoire Audiobooks. Today, we're diving into the first part of a spellbinding 5-part series. Brace yourselves for Make a Wish by Rorschach's Blot, where one seemingly innocent wish has the power to reshape Harry Potter's destiny. What would you wish for if you had the chance? Let's find out. Disclaimer. As always, a quick disclaimer. This fanfiction is a transformative work based on J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. All original characters, settings, and trademarks belong to their respective owners. This reading is created purely for entertainment, with no copyright infringement intended. Make-A-Wish takes us to a point in Harry's life where he's faced with a choice that could change everything. Rorschach's Blot has masterfully woven a tale that delves into the consequences of magic and desire, exploring themes of fate, guilt, and redemption in a way that feels fresh yet familiar. This story offers an opportunity to examine a pivotal moment in Harry's journey, one that will have ripple effects through the entire wizarding world. As we await the upcoming Harry Potter series on HBO Max, stories like Make a Wish remind us just how much untapped potential exists within the world J.K. Rowling created. The wizarding world is constantly evolving, and fanfiction like this helps us envision what-ifs that the original books and movies may never have explored. Rorschach's Blot is known for crafting intricate, emotionally charged narratives that leave readers on the edge of their seats. Their work doesn't shy away from exploring complex moral dilemmas and the dark, uncharted territories of the magical world. If you're a fan of introspective stories that delve into the heart of what it means to be a wizard, Rorschach's Blot is an author you'll want to follow. So sit back, relax, and prepare for the journey ahead. Part 1 of Make a Wish by Rorschach's Blot, right here at Grimoire Audiobooks. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated on the next part of this magical adventure. Let's get started. Make a Wish by Rorschach's Blot.
1. Goodbye.
An oppressive quiet hung over the car throughout the beginning of the ride from King's Cross Station. "Let me out here," Harry commanded quietly, breaking the silence. "What?" Vernon blustered. "Who are you to tell me what to do?" "I'll give you a simple choice," Harry gave his uncle an icy glare. "You'll either let me out of the car right now, or I will inform my friends that you have been mistreating me, that you need a little visit to remind you to be courteous." "Fine," Vernon growled in anger, "but don't expect me to wait around for you." "I don't." Harry stepped onto the curb, taking only his owl. "What I do expect is for you to take Dudley and Aunt Petunia out to eat and to take your time heading home." "Who are you to order me around, boy?" Vernon was begging to lose control over his temper. "Here," Harry handed his uncle a 50-pound note. "Enjoy yourselves." "Where did you get this, boy?" Vernon asked in shock. "Goodbye, Uncle," Harry waved to his astonished relatives. "I don't believe that we will be seeing each other again." The Dursleys didn't bother to respond, choosing to drive away without a backward glance. Harry smiled sadly as he watched them go, and then he opened the cage to let his owl free. "Take this to Hermione, girl." He attached a short note to the owl's leg, "and stay with her until I come to get you." Hooting sadly, Hedwig gave his ear a last affectionate nip before taking off to deliver her master's message. Harry watched until his beloved pet had faded from sight, then he turned and began the short walk back to the wizarding world. Taking a deep breath before he entered the leaky cauldron, Harry opened the door and quickly walked to the door that guarded the entrance to Diagon Alley. He paused for a second in front of the brick entrance, fearing that cries of "the boy who lived" would erupt from behind, destroying his chance of having an enjoyable summer. After several moments of silence, he tapped the correct sequence on the bricks and walked through the entrance to the wizarding world. Rushing to Gringotts, he immediately went to the nearest open teller. Yes, the goblin looked down at him. "I need a way to access my account while abroad," Harry answered quickly, "and I'll need to be able to get muggle money as well as galleons." "Key?" the goblin asked, reaching out to accept his vault key. "One moment, please." The goblin rummaged through a small chest on his desk for several minutes before pulling out a small pouch. This pouch will draw coins directly from your account, and if you tap it 3 times with your wand, then it will change into a Muggle wallet, which will allow you to draw the appropriate Muggle currency. Will that be all? I'll also need all of my transactions to be kept private. Harry hardened his features. I do not want anyone finding out about any of my purchases. Of course not, the goblins seemed mildly offended. We pride ourselves on our confidentiality. Good, Harry nodded in satisfaction. Otherwise, I would have been forced to close my accounts and announce to the Daily Prophet that I no longer trust Gringotts to manage my fortunes. I see, the goblin frowned. Rest assured that no one but yourself shall receive any accurate information concerning your account. Thank you, Harry nodded politely. So, unless you have anything you want to talk about, then I've got to be going. No, Mr. Potter, the goblin's face could have been carved from stone. I don't think we have anything else to discuss. Resisting the urge to smirk, Harry turned and slowly made his way towards the exit, for hopeful that his plan to have an enjoyable summer would work for the first time. From Gringotts, Harry made his way to the Ye Old Travel Shop, which was a small specialty shop for wizards and witches intending to spend time abroad. Harry heard a faint ringing sound as he opened the door, and he looked around for the shopkeeper. What can I do for you? An old man approached. Planning to go abroad, are you? Maybe, Harry shrugged. I just want to drift around and see where I end up. The old man smiled with understanding. Just graduated from one of the magic schools, and now you want to go find yourself. Something like that, Harry agreed with a sad smile. Then I have just the thing for you, the old man replied enthusiastically. My patented ultimate backpacker's kit. It has everything the young wanderer could ask for. A large multi-compartment leather frame pack, charmed to be light as a feather and to hold many times its normal capacity. Really? Harry began to take an interest. What else? It comes with a portable stove, cookware, a tent, sleeping bag, and much more. The shopkeep was really getting into it. Everything you need to travel anywhere from the tropics to the top of Mt. Everest. This pack has it all. Wow, Harry was mildly impressed. What else would you recommend for someone who is planning to drift around? A few more things, sir, he shrugged. The pack contains all of the essentials, but there are several items that I can recommend to make life more pleasant in addition to the pack. The old man looked at Harry's ragged appearance. You'll be wanting some new clothing, something to help you with other languages, and it may be a good idea to have a guidebook along as well. Okay, Harry shrugged. Give me the best of whatever you recommend. Just be quick about it. I want to be out of the country as soon as I can. No problems, kid. The shopkeep put several items on the table. These glasses will adjust to any prescription, and in addition to many other things, allow you to read any language. This silver hoop goes in either ear and converts any language you hear into English. This ring goes on whichever hand you use to write with, and allows you to write any language. And finally, this small bar of silver goes through your tongue and magically contorts your mouth to allow you to speak any language. In time, and with enough use, they will eventually teach you the languages that you use. Wow. Harry nodded, impressed by the items. What else? This book. The man indicated a book entitled Everything You Will Ever Need to Know While Traveling Around the World, is full of useful information, and I would recommend that you read the warnings in the front about underage magic before you do anything else. And this set of clothing will magically alter itself to whatever is needed for whatever climate you are in. It has charms to be self-cleaning and self-repairing, and it can change colors and styles with a thought. There is one more thing that I would like to get. Harry bit his lower lip. I was wondering if you had an item that would allow me to blend in better? Want to immerse yourself in the culture, huh? The store owner nodded his head. Got just the thing. This bracelet creates a powerful SB field around you, and it will help you remain unnoticed unless you commit an aggressive or incredibly strange act. Thanks. Harry gave a relieved smile. Do you know where I could arrange for a port key to get me to the continent? Pick up your kit, and I'll have one ready for you in a jiffy. Thanks. Here you go, lad. The man handed Harry a small stone. Thanks. How much do I owe you? Don't worry about it, Harry. The man smiled at Harry's shocked look, considered a thanks for looking out for us and sorry about believing the worst of you. It's untraceable and it will take you to Holland right about. Harry disappeared. Now, I hope you find what you were looking for, lad. Pandemonium would best describe the scene outside number 4, Privet Drive, when the Dursleys arrived, without Harry. Within minutes, Albus Dumbledore had arrived along with several members of his order to begin their investigation. The Dursleys say that he had them drop him off in London. Professor, one of the order members reported to the headmaster, says that he didn't want to stay with them and decided to just leave. I found something in their car that belonged to Harry. Remus Lupin ran up brandishing a small paper pamphlet. It has Harry's scent all over it. Thank you, Remus. The headmaster accepted the small pamphlet. I believe it's time I went and had a chat with Harry's friends about his whereabouts. The headmaster appeared before a small upper-class suburban home and rang the doorbell once. Hello? A good-looking woman answered the door. What can I help you with? Greetings, Dumbledore smiled. I'm the headmaster at Hermione's school, and I was wondering if I could speak with her. Of course, the woman nodded. Won't you come in? Delighted to. Professor Dumbledore, a bushy-headed young woman called from atop a staircase. I'm glad that you got my letter, but I didn't expect to see you this soon. I'm afraid that I didn't get any letter, Miss Granger. Dumbledore smiled at her kindly. What was the problem? I got a strange letter from Harry that I thought you should know about. The intelligent young witch looked worried, and I was hoping that you would check to see if he was doing okay. I'm afraid that I have some bad news. Dumbledore took a deep breath. Harry had his uncle drop him off somewhere in London, and he has been missing for several hours. You don't think he got captured, do you? Rest assured that I've had no information that would lead me to that conclusion. The headmaster reached into his robes and pulled out the worn pamphlet that had been found by Remus Lupin. I'm afraid the only clue we have is this brochure that we found in his relative's car. May I see that, Professor? Hermione took the pamphlet gently. This looks like a standard handout from one of the charity organizations that were in the Muggle portion of King's Cross. Why do you think that Harry kept it? Well, this particular charity tries to help dying children and, oh no. The pretty young witch paled. Harry thinks he's going to die. What do you mean by that, Miss Granger? The headmaster demanded. What leads you to that conclusion? This belongs to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. They do things to bring happiness to terminally ill children. Hermione brandished the pamphlet. Harry must have learned something that makes him think that he doesn't have much time left to live. I see. The headmaster's shoulders dropped. Is that why he didn't return to Privet Drive? He wants to make the most of the time he has left. Hermione was holding back tears, not to spend it with people he hates. Thank you. You've been most helpful. The headmaster gave Hermione a sad smile and disappeared with a faint pop. After Dumbledore's disappearance, Hermione ran up to her room and reread the short note that had been sent along with Hedwig. Clutching it to her chest, she let the tears fall and hoped for the safe return of her best friend. Hermione, please look over Hedwig. I want to live before I die.
Harry.
2. The adventure begins. Harry's hand immediately went to his wand after the tug of the portkey disappeared. Welcome to Amsterdam, kid. A man in a strange uniform greeted him with a smile. Slowly taking his hand off of his wand, Harry looked over to see a blond man in an odd uniform. Hello. Papers? The man held out his hand expectantly. Just a moment. Harry stalled as he tried to figure out what to do. I know I have them here somewhere. Take your time. The man's demeanor became decidedly colder as he began to regard Harry with suspicion. 1 second. Harry reached into his new pack, trying to think of some way to keep his vacation from ending before it began. Within seconds, his fingers brushed up against a small leather booklet. Pulling it out, Harry looked at it dumbly, trying to figure out what it was. Thank you, sir. The man carefully took the small booklet out of Harry's hands and began examining it. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Black. I didn't realize that you were stalling out of embarrassment and not because of some other purpose. Yes, well, Harry replied eloquently. No need to say a thing. The man stamped several pages in the small book. I understand what it's like to have an odd name, and none need know anything but your last name. Thanks. Harry took his passport back and resisted the urge to ask, You wouldn't happen to know a good place to stay the night, would you? Outside, and to the left about 2 blocks down. You can't miss it. Thanks. Harry nodded to the man. And have a good day. You as well, Mr. Black. The customs agent gave him one last grin before waving him through the gates. The second that he was out of the customs agent's sight, Harry pulled out the small leather-covered booklet that had been identified as his passport and opened it to see what had drawn the man's attention. It took several seconds of examination before he found it under the names section. Apparently, he was named Patimus de Grim-Gnomed Black. It was also apparent that the salesman back in Diagon Alley knew entirely too much and had a rather odd sense of humor. It only took Harry about 5 minutes to find the hotel and get himself a room. Walking over to his bed, he prepared to take a short nap before going out to explore the world. Then he remembered the salesman's advice to read the first page of the book. Pulling it out, he flipped to the warning and began to read. A warning to parents with school-aged children. It is a little-known fact that the tracking charms placed by the various governments of the wizarding world on the wands of underage children are only effective in their country of origin. This means that if the tracking charm was cast in England, then your child could perform underage magic in any country besides England without fear of being caught. This problem is further exacerbated by the ignotus charm, which can be used to remove tracking charms from a tracked wand. This problem is not insurmountable, and so long as your child does not learn and perform the dolus charm, then your child's wand can be checked regularly by any number of detection spells to ensure that they have not removed the tracking charms. If, however, your child does perform the dolus charm on their wand after performing the ignotus charm, then there is no known way that their wand can be accurately checked for the absence of the ministry-mandated tracking charms because of the fact that the dolus charm will give out a false positive and prevent the application of any new tracking charms. For information purposes only, the proper wand movements and incantations for both the ignotus and dolus charms are provided below. You may also note that at the beginning of each country section, a list of restricted and illegal spells is provided along with a list of useful spells, also for information purposes only. Harry blinked and a smirk appeared on his face as he realized why the shopkeeper had insisted that he read the warning in the beginning of the book before he did anything else. Not a day into his summer holiday, and things were already beginning to look up. Placing his book back into his pack, Harry stretched out on his bed for a few hours of sleep. After all, even a socially deprived kid who was raised in a cupboard knows that it's best to explore Amsterdam at night. In the red light district, Harry found himself overwhelmed by the sights, the smells, the lights, and the people. Peeking into one of the many windows, Harry learned more about human anatomy than had been taught in the short course he had received in grade school, and his 20-minute stroll had taught him more about the world than he had in all of his previous years combined. Face red and head spinning with new experiences, Harry beat a hasty retreat to the relative safety of hotel room, deciding that maybe it would be best to explore during the day, allowing himself the luxury of easing into the nightlife. Awaking early the next morning, Harry dressed himself and walked down to the hotel's lobby. "Good morning," he nodded to a pair of Swedish backpackers. "Hello." The 2 Swedish girls grinned at the confused look on his face. "First time in Amsterdam?" "Yes, it is. Everything is just so." "Yes, it can be a bit overwhelming, can it?" Hot Swedish girl number 2 agreed. "We've been here several times, and we still find it a bit overwhelming at times." "If you've been here several times, then what do you suggest I do?" Harry asked the buxom twosome. "Why don't you go down to one of the coffee shops and get some brownies?" Hot Swedish girl number 1 suggested with a wink. "Thanks." Harry smiled brightly. "I could something sweet right now." Waving goodbye to his 2 new friends, Harry walked across the street to one of Amsterdam's infamous coffee shops. "Good morning," the barista greeted him. What can I get for you today? Some girls recommended that I try some of your brownies. All right, the man nodded cheerfully. Anything to drink? Could I get a cup of tea with milk? At the man's nod, Harry continued. Add the tea to the milk, and don't stir. Just take a seat, and I'll have it right out. Nodding in understanding, Harry found himself a seat in one of the corner tables. After a short amount of time, the barista came out with a tray containing a large mug of tea and a plate full of brownies. Enjoy. The man gave Harry a knowing smile before returning to his place behind the counter. Taking his first tentative bite of the baked goods, Harry was surprised at how good it tasted, chocolatey with a hint of something that he couldn't identify. Harry felt a strange sort of calm fall over his body as he sipped his tea. For the first time that he could remember, he felt relaxed. He felt like a normal person. He felt like none of his problems mattered anymore. After several hours and several cups of tea, Harry rose to his feet and walked out of the coffee shop intent on finding some lunch at the restaurant on the other side of the avenue. Moments after Harry found his table, the peace of the day was shattered by the sounds of 4 incoming apparitions. Figuring that the order had found him and that his vacation had come to an end, Harry looked out the large picture window and was shocked to see the street filled not with order members, but with 4 figures in black robes and white masks. Harry was out of his seat in a flash and halfway to the kitchen before most of the other patrons of the cafe had time to blink. Do you have any cooking oils? Harry grabbed the confused cook by the front of his shirt. Right over there. The cook eyed the obviously deranged man with no small amount of nervousness. You'll find all the oil that you could ask for. Grabbing 2 large bottles, Harry made his way back to the front of the cafe and towards the newly arrived group of dark wizards. We know you're here, Potter, one of the masked figures called. Come out, and none of these muggles have to get hurt. Frowning in annoyance, Harry threw the 2 bottles towards the group and hit them with a shattering charm. There he is, get him, the apparent leader of the Death Munchers called after he noticed the source of the incoming spell. Several of the Death Eaters made to follow their commander's instructions, only to slip in the puddle of oil that Harry had dumped into the street. Harry further thinned their numbers with several reductor curses, and within seconds there was not a Death Eater standing. And after summoning their wands, he approached the fallen figures cautiously, reacting to any movement with several well-placed stunners. Walking up to the leader of the detachment, Harry removed the man's mask and cloak. Enervate, Harry gave a nasty smile to the leader of the detachment. What exactly was your purpose here? I'm not saying a thing, the Death Eater growled defiantly. I know my rights, and you can't force me to do a thing. That's not strictly true, Harry smirked. You see, I am not an employee of any magical government. So, until a representative of the Dutch ministry arrives, I get to play with you all I want. Why you wouldn't do that? The Death Eater bit back nervously. You're one of the good guys? No, Harry disagreed. I'm just a guy on vacation. Now do you want to see how many bones I can break before I have to turn you over to law enforcement, or do you want to talk? We were here to capture Harry Potter. How did you find him? One of the Dark Lord's followers at Hogwarts placed a tracking charm on the boy in an attempt to find out where he lives over the summer. I guess that muggle-loving headmaster of his didn't bother to check his golden boy. Stupefied, Harry looked down at the Death Eater in disgust. It appeared that Tom had been recruiting. It also appeared that he hadn't managed to get any competent new followers. Staatsdieners, stay where you are. Several wizards in official-looking robes approached wearily. Slowly place your wand on the ground, and then put your hands up. I would rather not put my wand on the ground. Harry was careful not to make any sudden movements. One of these morons might be conscious, and if so, then I would rather not give him my wand. Then slowly hold your wand by the tip and hold it above your head, an intimidating-looking witch commanded. Then walk towards me. All right, Harry agreed. I don't suppose that you believe me if I were to tell you that I didn't have anything to do with this? Harry looked around hopefully for a few moments, and then let out a sigh. Didn't think so. I'm going to take your wand from you, and then I'm going to get your statement. The witch handed his wand off to one of his comrades. Do not move. Still as a statue, Harry had to resist the urge to frown. The witch relaxed quite a bit after he had taken Harry's wand. Now, sir, if I could take your statement? Sure. Harry nodded, then added hopefully, I don't suppose that you could take my statement while I got something to eat. So long as you aren't with them. The man motioned towards the Death Eaters. Then you can give your statement standing on your head, mister? Black. Harry gave his most charming smile. May I lower my arms? They're starting to cramp. You may. The woman nodded. I am Staatsdiener Annie van der Midger. Could you tell me what happened here? Well, I was just sitting down for lunch when they appeared. Harry motioned towards the fallen death munchers. I ran to the kitchen and got some oil. I used that and a few well-placed curses to defeat the group. Did you have any assistance? Staatsdiener van der Midger asked quickly. No. Harry shook his head and upon seeing her shocked look clarified. What we have here is the absolute worst that Voldemort has in his service, and I had surprise and luck on my side. I see. The woman nodded. Do you have anything else to add? The leader said something about using a tracking charm to hunt someone. Harry grimaced, and being the suspicious sort that I am, I was wondering if you would be willing to check me for such a charm and if necessary remove it. Of course. The woman performed several complex wand movements. You are correct. You did have such a spell, but I do not believe that it was placed by a Death Eater. Why not? It was rather amateurishly done. I'd say that whoever placed it couldn't be out of school. Thank you. Harry gave a relieved grin. Probably just a prank then, but one can never be too careful. I agree. The Staatsdiener nodded. Find a seat, and if the other witnesses collaborate your story, then your wand will be returned, and you will be free to go. Thank you. Harry nodded politely. May I ask you one question? You may. Are these attacks common in Holland? No. The woman paused to think. I believe that this is only the second in the last 20 years. Normally, they confine their activities to the UK. Thank you. Harry smiled. With luck, it will be another 20 years before you have to deal with another. I'd rather we never have to deal with another. The woman shrugged. If you will just wait here for a moment, I'd just like converse with my colleagues for a moment before we continue. Sure thing. Harry took a seat on the curb. The woman favored Harry with one last smile, then she walked out of earshot to another group of Staatsdieners. Wells. The witnesses all agree that a group of men in black robes appeared and began yelling something about something in English. The man checked his notes. The man black came out of the cafe and attacked. He then walked up to the fallen Death Eaters and hit them with a red light, and then we arrived. All told, it sounds like the fight was over in less than 2 minutes. All right. The woman blinked in surprise. What else? One of the other Staatsdiener pulled out his notebook. Each of the suspects was hit by multiple reductor curses and stunners. Looks like they were down before they even had time to fight back. He glanced at Harry. Whoever this guy is, he doesn't like to play around. Staatsdiener van der Midger took out her own notebook. We have a male of unknown nationality and age that by his own account defeated 4 Death Eaters before they had a chance to cast a single spell, though in his professional option was that they were new recruits. He speaks perfect Dutch with a Haarlem accent, and the woman paused, and he has an unknown magical effect that makes it difficult for me to give a description. Any ideas on who we're dealing with here? Whoever he is, he's good. One of the men bit his lower lip. I know most of the Staatsdieners in Holland, so maybe an experienced Staatsdiener from another country? I disagree. One of the others shook his head. I can count on one hand the people who are good enough to do something like this, and most of them are missing so many body parts that they couldn't be him even under heavy disguise. And the ones that aren't? Van der Midger asked quietly. Had their minds shattered by overexposure to the Cruciatus curse, the Staatsdiener finished sadly. Whoever he is, wherever he came from, I can't say. I see, Van der Midger nodded. I'll go talk to him and get more of a statement. Maybe he'll let something slip. I wouldn't count on it. The man paused. Men like him don't make mistakes. Then wish me luck, she said over her shoulder as she began walking towards the enigmatic Mr. Black.
Well,
Harry smiled up at her. Your story checks out. She nodded. If you want, we can go to a restaurant where you can get something to eat, and I can get a more detailed statement. Fine, Harry nodded. Is there anywhere around here that you would suggest we go? Would you prefer wizard or non? Either is fine, Harry grinned, so long as it tastes good, and there's a lot of it. Then I would suggest we go over to the magical section of Calverstrat. They've got a restaurant that claims they will serve anything the customer can think of. Sounds fine. Is it far from here? Just around the corner. Then let's go, Harry replied, eager to finally get his lunch. Harry followed the Dutch law enforcement officer through a series of twists and turns until they came to a small cafe in the mouth of a street that branched off the main. Here we are. Great. Harry looked at the cafe with approval. Let's find a table. Please follow me. The waiter announced his presence. Will you be requiring a menu? No, thank you. Harry waved the man off. I'll be ready to order in a few minutes. To start with, though, could you bring me something to drink? Right away, sir. I'm afraid that I don't know much about Dutch food. Harry grinned. What would you suggest I orders? I've always liked the Limburg Zervlies, the woman responded after a moment of contemplation. Thank you, and feel free to order something for yourself. Thank you. After a short wait, the waiter had taken their orders, and the curious Staatsdiener pulled out her notebook, eager to get her questions answered. So, Mr. Black, she took a moment to collect her thoughts. What made you think that those Death Eaters were new recruits? Experience. Harry took a sip of his drink. I've faced several members of the inner circle, and each one of them would have been quicker to throw curses. Harry paused for a moment. Voldemort has very few followers that are anything more than low-grade thugs. Even his inner circle attempts to substitute skill for sadism. The four I faced didn't even measure up to that low standard. I see. The woman hid her surprise. Do you think that we'll see more of them? I don't know. Harry took a sip from his drink. My guess would be that they were not working on an official mission, so there is a good chance that Vold won't bother to break them out of prison. Why do you think that? It sounded as if they were hunting someone, and in an official hunting party, there would be a high-ranking death muncher along to supervise. For an important target, it would be a member of the inner circle. Harry stopped when the waiter returned with the food and waited until the man was out of earshot. The leader of this group was a low-level flunky. My guess was that they were on an operation of their own in hopes of eliminating the target on their own in some misguided attempt to curry favor with their master. I see. Definitely a professional, the woman thought to herself. I noticed that you started out with some rather lethal spells and only switched to stunners after the Death Eaters were down. Yes, I did, Harry agreed. Another lesson I learned the hard way is that a stunner is rather easy to counter, but broken bones keep your opponent down. I'll keep that in mind. Just who are you, Mr. Black? I'm just a guy on a vacation to try to find something he's lost. And what's that? Life, Harry replied sadly. 3. Tiptoe through the tulips. Oh, Vander Midger looked at him sympathetically. Saw too much, and now you want to get away from it all. I've never had a vacation. Harry seemed to stare at nothing. All my life I've never had a chance to relax. I just want a chance to do the things I never had a chance to do. I think I deserve that much. I agree, Mr. Black. She watched him jump, and I hope that the remainder of your vacation is a bit quieter than today has been. Thank you. Harry allowed his eyes to refocus. Let's go back to the incident. Do you have any more questions for me? A few. The woman checked her notebook, speaking as one professional to another. How would you suggest we deal with any future Death Eater activity in Holland? I would suggest that you look very closely at the methods you have for keeping your prison secure. Harry took a sip from his drink. For example, I believe that one of the prime reasons for mass escape from the British ministry's prison on Azkaban Island was the fact that they gave too much trust to the Dementors. I see. Staatsdiener Vander Midger made several notes. Any dueling advice? What many law enforcement professionals seem to forget is that they are much better trained than most Death Eaters. The problem is that the Death Munchers and Moldy Shorts have such fearsome reputations that people forget just how incompetent they are. Harry gave a sad smile, but never forget that they are dangerous. And never let down your guard because you think that they're helpless. A very good friend of mine almost died because she let her guard down around a helpless Death Eater. Thank you. Anything else that you'd be willing to share? One more thing. Harry put down his fork and fixed the woman with an intense look. Always take the fight seriously. Never for a moment let your guard slip. I lost a very good friend because he forgot that. Thanks for sharing that. She smiled at the man across the table. I'll be sure to keep those lessons in mind. Good. Harry nodded sadly. Nothing would please me more than the thought that someone might learn something from my experiences. It allows me to pretend that some good came with the bad. Staatsdiener van der Midger paused for a moment, unsure of how to reply to such a statement. What are your plans for the remainder of your vacation, Mr. Black? Well, Harry forced himself to smile. I was planning on visiting some of the museums around here, and maybe visiting some of Holland's famous tulip fields. After that I'll drift somewhere else. Would you mind leaving contact information? The Staatsdiener asked quickly. I believe that the head of magical law enforcement would like to meet with you in the future. All right. Harry wrote his hotel and room number on a napkin. Here is where I'll be staying while I'm in Holland. I have no idea where I'll be after that. Thank you. I'm sure that will be fine. She stood. Please allow me to pay your bill. It's the least my department can do for the assistance that you provided us today. Thank you. Harry stood. If you need to speak with me again today, I'll be visiting museums for the remainder of the day, and I'll be back in my hotel room around 7 or 8 o'clock tonight. Thank you for your time, Mr. Black. The Staatsdiener held out her hand. We will be in touch with you in the near future. Anytime, Staatsdiener van der Midger. Harry took her hand. I am always happy to help in any way that I can. Harry and van der Midger said their goodbyes, and Harry was off on his next adventure, to build himself a larger cache of memories to cherish. It was a short trip to Rembrandt House Museum on Jodenbrestraat, and Harry's excitement and grew with every step. While he didn't like to admit it, Harry had always had a love of art. It had seemed to him the only profession that would benefit from the amount of trauma that he had experienced in his young life. Art had always been one of the few joys that Harry had in his life, and when he was younger and locked in his cupboard, he used to calm himself by closing his eyes and imagining the wonder that artists could create using only their imaginations and a bit of paint. Harry's heart seemed to want to burst from his chest as he entered the house that had once belonged to one of the greatest artists the world has seen. Harry forced himself to hurry as he walked through the museum, and throughout his visit, Harry marveled at the sheer diversity of the items he found. Harry visited over a dozen museums that day, and he saw hundreds of works from Rembrandt to Van Gogh, and he felt a profound sense of regret that in all likelihood his conflict with Voldemort would prevent a longer visit in the future. Walking through the front doors of his hotel, Harry mentally compared the paintings at Hogwarts with the masterpieces that he had seen earlier that day. Harry came to a realization. Amateurs, he muttered to himself. In comparison to what he had been privileged to see in Amsterdam's museums, many of the works so celebrated in the wizarding world were nothing more than crude drawings with a bit of magic. The two Staatsdiener that had spent the day discreetly following the enigmatic Mr. Black nearly had heart attacks when their long-range microphones picked up the odd wizard's comment. Sharing a look of surprise mingled with respect, the two law enforcement officers apparat to their offices to give their reports. Upon their appearance at the office, they were greeted by a large number of curious people and one supervisor who was more than a little eager to learn more about the mysterious Mr. Black. Peters, Jansen, give me a quick report on how the surveillance on Mr. Black went. What do you want to know first, Wielands? Staatsdiener Mark Peters asked slowly. How did he spend his day? Mr. Black spent the day visiting several art museums around the city. Staatsdiener Peters replied quickly. Did Mr. Black notice that he was being followed? We had no indication that he knew that he was being followed until the end of the day. The Staatsdiener paused as he tried to collect his thoughts. What happened, Mark? The older officer prompted using his colleague's first name. At the end of the day, Mr. Black shook his head, smirked, and muttered the word amateurs under his breath. The man licked his lips. I'm not sure if we were meant to hear it, but based on our speculation of Mr. Black's past and capabilities, We believe that he was aware of the fact that he was under surveillance. Was that the only indication you received? The only one we're sure of. Jansen entered the conversation. But several times during the day looked in the shop windows. At the time we believed that he was looking at the items on display, but now I'm not so sure. What are you thinking? Wieland prompted. I think that he may have been watching us in the reflections on the windows, and I also think that we should examine the possibility that he was aware of our presence the entire time. Don't worry about it. Staatsdiener Wieland rubbed his eyes. I know that there is no way that a normal suspect would have noticed either of you in a normal surveillance operation. We knew that he was good, and now we have an idea of just how good. Still, it bothers me that he was able to spot us, and that we never even noticed that he was watching us. Jansen bit his lower lip. There is no shame in being beaten by the best. Wieland consoled his two officers, and there's no shame in being spotted by someone as good as this black fellow. Harry was in a good mood as he awoke early the next morning, his visits to the art museum providing his subconscious with material to give him dreams that were far better than his usual nightmares. Dressing quickly, Harry left the hotel and walked through the maze of streets that guarded the magical section of Calverstraat. Walking down the street, Harry's senses were assaulted by a series of strange smells and odd sights. Giving up his plan of finding anything without directions, he walked into the nearest shop intent on finding someone willing to give him instruction on how to navigate this bustling section of magical Holland. Can I help you? One of the shop attendants asked when she noticed Harry walk in. Yes. Harry nodded gratefully. I was hoping you could tell me where I could find some transportation to the tulip fields in the north of the country and back. 2 doors up, shop by the name of Floral Tours. Tell the man behind the counter what you want, and he'll set you up with a tour or porky, depending on what you require. The woman smiled. While you're here, could I interest you in a camera? Might be nice to have something to take a few pictures with it. You plan to go sightseeing? Sure. Harry nodded, reasoning that it would be polite to buy something after all the help that he had received. Besides, it wasn't like he couldn't afford it. What do you recommend I should get? That would all depend on what you plan to do with it. We have models ranging from 10 guldens on up. She smiled sweetly. Why don't you describe what your needs are, and I'll tell you what cameras would meet them, or if you prefer you could tell me what amount you would like to spend, and I'll show you what falls within your price range. Thank you. Harry concentrated for a bit. I guess that I need a camera that is very durable. I tend to get into trouble, and I would hate to have to keep replacing my camera. Anything else? Reliable. Harry nodded. And small. I don't want something that will take up a lot of space. It would be nice if it would develop its own film or not need film also. I think I have just the camera for you. The woman smiled. But I am afraid that it's a bit expensive, she added with a frown. Tell me about it. Let me show it to you while I tell you some of its features. She pulled one of the cameras off the shelf. As you can see, it's small, only 3 by 4 inches, and it is durable, able to function in any environment from the top of a mountain to the bottom of the sea. Wow. Harry was impressed. What else? It has an internal transfiguration feature that turns any raw material entered into the feeding compartment into usable film, and another feature that develops the film into pictures which it prints through this slot in the side. What about reliability? It has a self-repair feature to take care of physical damage, and a 300-year warranty to take care of any magical problems. I'll take it. Harry pulled out his wallet and began removing currency. Thank you. My pleasure, sir. The salesgirl smiled at him one last time. Enjoy your trip, and I hope that your camera serves you well. I will. Harry nodded as he walked out the door. It only took him a few minutes to find the shop that the girl in the other store had mentioned, and when he stepped inside, he was amazed at the number and quality of the floral arrangements on display. Hellos. He called into the seemingly empty store. Is there anyone here? Yes. A confused-looking man popped out from behind the counter. What can I do for you? I was hoping to visit the tulip fields, Harry answered, and I was told that you could help me with transportation. Yes, of course, the odd man nodded. Did you need a tour guide? No, I just wanted to spend a few hours looking at them on my own, and I was hoping to get a port key to get me there and one to take me back. One moment, the man disappeared behind the counter again. Here we are, he said, appearing with two odd-looking tulip-shaped figurines. Just hold the green one and say, Calverstrat, when you wish to return, and hold the red one and say, Tulip, when you wish to leave. Thank you. Harry paid the man and stepped outside the shop. Tulip. Harry felt the telltale pull on his navel and nearly stumbled as he arrived on a hill with a breathtaking view of several tulip fields. Taking several pictures of the sight, Harry supposed that other people would think it odd that a boy of his age would spend his time visiting museums and taking pictures of flowers, but it was his belief that after seeing so much ugliness in his life, he was entitled to a bit of beauty. Besides, it wasn't like he was going to be able to hold off on such things until he was older like the others of his generation, not with his destiny of facing the Dark Lord anyway. He spent an indeterminate amount of time just standing on the hill staring at the loveliness before him before he decided to leave his position and get a closer look at the flowers. Harry spent several minutes walking beside the fields until a flicker of movement drew his attention. After a moment of close examination, he relaxed when he found the source of the movement, an odd sort of creature frolicking inside one of the tulips. Smiling in amusement at the strange creature's antics, he took several pictures of it with his new camera. Taking one last look around and sighing with regret, he activated his second port key and returned to Amsterdam. Good evening, Mr. Black. Two men holding badges greeted Harry on his return. Hello, Harry replied cautiously. What can I do for you gentlemen tonight? The head of magical law enforcement has requested that you meet with her, one of the men answered. When? Now, if possible, the man quickly replied, but if that is inconvenient to you, then I suppose that we could reschedule. Now would be fine. Harry nodded. Let's go. One of the two men nodded and held out his badge. My badge has been spelled as a port key to the department, so if you would just touch it, then we can be going. All right. Harry activated the port key by putting his hand on the badge. Welcome, Mr. Black. A formidable woman wearing what Harry recognized to be a Staatsdiener uniform greeted him on his arrival. I am Hoofd van de Staatsdiener, San Vermeer, and I am pleased that you accepted my invitation. It seemed like the polite thing to do. Harry nodded. What was it you wanted to speak with me about? I have looked over the reports of your fight with the Death Eaters, and I would like to take the opportunity to thank you on behalf of my country for your intervention. The woman smiled, and the lives that you undoubtedly saved by neutralizing the Death Eaters before they had a chance to harm any innocents. No thanks are necessary. Harry tried to wave it off. I just did what anybody would have done if they had the ability. I disagree, and more importantly, the minister disagrees. Vermeer's voice took on a firmer tone. So, in recognition of the great service that you have given to our country and the lives that you have saved, it is my great pleasure to induct you into the Orde van de Leeuw. Thank you. Harry was stunned. Thank you. I understand. Vermeer smiled at him as she presented him with the medal. Men like you don't do it for the thanks. I never expected this when I confronted those Death Eaters. Harry motioned to the medal. I just thought that they were after me and that it would be better to attack than to run away. But even had you known that they were not after you, would you have run, or would you have leapt to the defense of innocent lives? The chief of magical law enforcement questioned gently. I would have protected them, but like I said, that was nothing special, Harry argued. Anyone would have done the same. I see that I'm not going to persuade you otherwise, Vermeer laughed, so I'll change the subject. What are your plans now? I was thinking about going to Paris, Harry shrugged. Always wanted to see the Eiffel Tower. After that, I guess I'll go where the wind takes me. Excellent. Thank you for sharing your travel plans with me. The Hoofd van de Staatsdiener nodded in satisfaction. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a meeting to go to, and I'm sure that you would like to return to your hotel. Then good night, hoofed van de Staatsdiener Sanvermeer. Harry gave a sad smile. May your dreams be better than mine. Good night, Mr. Black, the women replied sadly, and thank you once again for the lives that you saved. 4. Welcome to the City of Lights. Harry returned to his hotel room later that night. Pulling out his new camera, he hit the button to develop his pictures and spent several minutes flipping through them. He was pleased to see that he had gotten several good shots of the odd little creature that he had seen, and he was a bit disappointed that several of his photos had not turned out quite as well as he might have hoped. Placing one of them into an envelope, he addressed it to the Quibbler and chuckled as he imagined Luna's reaction to some of the odd positions the little creature would take. Discarding the one photo that appeared to be nothing but an empty patch of grass, he carefully packed the rest of them and went to sleep. Harry got up early the next morning and shouldered his pack. Approaching the front desk, he smiled at the staff. "Good morning, Mr. Black. Did you sleep well?" the polite young man behind the counter asked. "Yes, I did. Thank you," Harry nodded back. "I've decided that it's time I moved on." "I see. Checking out then?" The worker pulled out a form. "Sign here, please." Harry signed the form and paid his bill. "I was wondering if you could do one favor for me?" "Of course. What can I do for you?" "I was wondering if you would be willing to have this letter posted to England?" Harry slid the envelope across the desk. "Of course." The man took the letter. "I shall have it sent out immediately." "Thank you." Harry gave one last sad smile. "And have a good day." "You as well, Mr. Black. And do not hesitate to call on us if you find yourself without a place to stay in your future visits to our lovely city." "I won't." Harry smiled at the thought of living long enough to make a return trip. "Goodbye." Harry stepped out the door and within a few minutes had arrived at the train station. Walking up to the window, he bought a ticket to Paris and hurried to his waiting train. While he waited for the train to leave, Harry found himself lost in thought. He wished that he could have spent more time in Holland. Harry realized that with the fact that he was being actively hunted by at least 2 powers, that it would not be prudent to stay in one place for too long. So it was with a heavy heart Harry boarded his train and left the Low Countries behind. As Harry's train left the station, 2 Staatsdieners were busy searching his vacant hotel room to see what, if any, clues the mysterious Mr. Black had left behind. "What have you got there bistling?" one of the Staatsdieners asked his colleague. "I'm not sure, Doubledam." The man squinted at the photo that he had found in the wastebasket. "Looks like a photo of an empty patch of grass." "Hand that over." Staatsdiener Doubledam held out his hand. "Let me look at it a bit." "What do you think of it?" Bissling asked after he had handed the photo over. "Why would Mr. Black have left that for us?" "I'm not." The Staatsdiener's eyes widened in surprise, and he spoke in a tone of awed disbelief. "I don't believe it." "What?" "I was assigned to watch over Mr. Black yesterday. Command felt that there was a very large chance that he might be attacked by Death Eaters, and they wanted to provide a bit of discreet protection." He took a breath. Mr. Black spotted the tail they had on him on the previous day, so I was given an invisibility cloak. So what I am holding is a picture of the indentations on the grass caused by my standing on it. Doubledam looked at his partner. "They said he was good, but I never imagined that he could be this good." "How you know he didn't have a magic eye or something like that British Staatsdieners?" "We checked him for that." Doubledam sat on the bed, and our scans confirmed that he wasn't using any form of mage sight. "So how did he know you were there?" Bissling asked. "How could he have known?" "Skill," Doubledam replied in a whisper. "He saw my footprints, or maybe he heard me breathing, and he left this picture as a lesson." "What kind of lesson?" "That if you are going to follow somebody under an invisibility cloak, you should remember that you leave other signs, and that people have other senses." Doubledam stood up. "Remember that lesson. While I doubt that you will ever have cause to deal with someone like Mr. Black in the future, it is best to remember that everyone can get lucky." "I will." Bissling blinked at the picture. "Where do you suppose Mr. Black came from? What kind of place turns out men like him?" I don't know, he might be an Onspreekbear, or he might be from another sort of department that we haven't even heard of. One thing I do know, Doubledam voice firmed as he stood up, he isn't any kind of Staatsdiener, otherwise we'd have heard about someone this good before now. To start with, I would like to thank everyone for coming to this meeting of the Order of the Phoenix. Albus Dumbledore looked over the group of people. As always, it warms my heart to see so many people dedicated to the fight against the dark. Several members of the group applauded politely as the headmaster finished his opening remarks. I have called this meeting for several reasons, Albus began after the applause trailed off. The first is to give everyone an update on our search for Harry Potter, and the second is to allow you all a chance to hear some intriguing new information discovered by one of our members. Kingsley, if you would start. The tall Auror stood. So far we have turned up nothing in our search for the boy who lived, though we have ruled out the possibility that he is hiding in one of England's magical enclaves, and the current thought is that he has probably used his knowledge of the Muggle world to find a suitable place to hide. Thank you, Kingsley. Albus nodded happily. Bills? Harry's account has not had any withdrawals for quite some time. The redhead trailed off. What is it? Dumbledore prompted. Something is bothering me, Bill replied absent-mindedly. Not sure what it is, though. I have faith that you will figure things out in due time. Dumbledore nodded. I believe that you had another matter you wished to discuss before we adjourn, Alastair. One thing, the scarred man agreed. Few days ago, for Death Eaters were involved in an attack in Amsterdam. Why didn't we hear about this before? Shacklebolt asked curiously. Because the four of them were put down before they had a chance to cast a single spell, Moody replied with an evil-looking leer. Dutch Aurors have some sort of field to detect magical transports. Kingsley mused. No, Mad Eye's leer became more pronounced. They had the misfortune to appear before a man by the name of Black, who became slightly annoyed at having his meal interrupted. And Dumbledore leaned forward in interest. And he hit the lot of them with a dozen reductor curses, had them down before they could blink. He let out a harsh wheezing laugh. Men I know in Dutch law enforcement tells me that whatever else he is, this man is a serious player, said that he spotted every one of the tales they put on him. You think we could recruit him? Dumbledore asked hopefully. Too soon to tell, Moody snorted, though I doubt that he would be willing to work here if he's as good as they say he is, and if he isn't as good, then I don't think that we should waste the resources to find him. So at the moment my advice is to wait and see if we can get more information. Harry smiled as he got off the train and took his first breath of Parisian air. Looking around, he made the split decision to do a bit of sightseeing before going off in search of a hotel room, and at the moment his first inclination was to head towards the tower that had for generations defined the Paris skyline. Hailing a taxi, Harry told the driver to take him to Eiffel Tower and then sunk back into his seat to enjoy the car's air conditioning. Wake up, the driver's voice pulled Harry back to consciousness. We have arrived. Thank you. Harry paid the man his fee and left the cab, walking towards the great elevators that serviced the tower. Looking past the crowds of people waiting in line, Harry stepped up to a small ticket booth that went unnoticed by the majority of the people waiting in line. How may I help you? The attendant in the booth asked with a raised eyebrow. I would like to visit one of the observation decks, Harry answered with a smile. This booth is for magical sections only, the attendant replied with a bored tone. Would you still like to buy a ticket? Harry purchased the ticket with a nod, assuming that the magical section would be less crowded than the non-magical one. What now? Go towards one of the normal elevators and step inside. The ticket will do everything else. Thank you. Harry nodded politely and then walked towards one of the elevators, noting with surprise the way people seemed to take no note of his presence among their number. Stepping into one of the elevators, Harry's excitement grew as it began its trip to the highest level. Wait one moment, sir. The conductor stopped Harry before he had a chance to leave the elevator. We haven't reached your stop yet. The doors closed and then opened without any perceptible movement of the car. Here we are, sir. Thank you. Harry nodded to the conductor, And have a good day. You as well, the conductor called out in reply as the doors of the elevator closed once more. Stepping out onto the deck, Harry found that his earlier assumption that the magical section would be less crowded was true. Looking around, he found that the observation deck was empty save a small man and his larger female companion. Walking towards the two to get a glance of the magnificent view, Harry began to hear bits of a rather odd conversation. "Look at the lines, hench girl." The little man gestured towards one of the supporting beams. "Can you imagine a more elegant way to construct this tower?" The girl shook her head in silent wonder as she admired a line of rivets. "It is truly wondrous," she agreed. "But Professor, when shall we get a chance to make our own masterpiece?" "Soon, hench girl, soon. I feel that we are not yet ready to embark on such a project." The little man answered sadly, "We must allow ourselves to learn all the mysteries of science before we create another such wondrous structure." Yes, the hench girl struck a dramatic pose. "But someday the world will gasp in awe upon seeing the marvels that we work." Yes, the small man stopped upon noticing Harry's approach. "It appears that we have a visitor." "Good afternoon," Harry nodded politely. "May I ask what you are doing?" "What we are doing is admiring the design of this amazing engineering masterpiece. We do it because our job, our passion, is to meld the wonders of science with the mysteries of magic to create perfection," he answered proudly. "To do so, we must familiarize ourselves with great feats of engineering like this tower here." "Oh." Harry regarded the two curiously. "Yes," the little man answered proudly. "And I can see by the fact that you have not recoiled in horror that you share my vision of combining magic and technology." "I suppose," Harry shrugged, "or it could be that I don't know enough to recoil in horror." "Nonsense," the little man disagreed. "I can tell that you are a man of intelligence and refinement, so allow me to introduce myself. I am Professor Fergus Farnsworth, and this is my hench girl." "Hello," hench girl waved. "And together we are the greatest team of magical engineers that the world has ever seen." The two of them gave Harry a look of anticipation.
"I'm
Mr. Black, and I'm just a guy on vacation." "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Black." The professor shook his hand. "Would you care to aid us in our expedition through the mysteries of life?" "And what exactly would that entail?" Harry asked the diminutive professor. "Do you know what the most difficult part of my job is, Mr. Black?" The professor asked in a flamboyant way. "It's thinking of what to make next." "Huh? Take my steam-powered hairbrush, for example," the professor continued. "It was a marvel of engineering, a wonder of spell work, but nobody uses it." "It weighed 19 pounds, hench girl supplied helpfully. "Yes, well," the professor glared at his assistant. "Hench girl and I have no problem with the science and the spell work, but we find ourselves unable to find worthy projects to devote our time to. And so, Mr. Black, we are asking you to help us." "Ah," Harry nodded in understanding. "But why are you asking me?" "Two reasons, Mr. Black. The first being that you have not run away or berated us for our idiotic goal and muggle-loving ways. And the second? I noticed that you are wearing an odd pair of glasses, Mr. Black, of a kind most often used by archivists and people in government service." The professor smiled nervously. "And that you are wearing a rather interesting bracelet that is the cause of the rather interesting magical effect that makes it difficult for me to focus on your facial features. A bracelet usually used by criminals and people in government service. Items which are also useful for a tourist that wishes to blend in better than is normal," Harry answered honestly. "But I still don't see why you want my help." The professor licked his lips nervously. "I do not believe that you are an archivist, Mr. Black, and I hope that you are not a criminal. I have heard a rumor that a man matching your characteristics foiled an attack by a dozen Death Eaters in Holland, and I was hoping that a man of your experience might have an idea for an item or two that would be useful in his line of work." "It was 4 Death Eaters, not a dozen," Harry grinned, "and I'm still not sure how I can help you." Just tell us some of the problems that you have experienced with your equipment or any of your perceived needs, the little man replied quickly. Ah, Harry nodded in understanding. You want me to think up things like a more durable wand or something? A more durable wand? The professor repeated dumbly. Friend of mine had his wand broken a few years ago, caused all sorts of problems. Harry smiled in remembrance. Ended up being a good thing in the end when another man got his hands on it. I see. The professor made eye contact with his henchgirl, and a wand that could not break would have been useful to this friend of yours? I suppose that I'm not too good at this, huh? Harry shook his head ruefully. But at least you didn't waste too much time with me. Not at all, Mr. Black, the professor answered quickly, fearful that he would not hear any more. I find your story to be quite fascinating, elegant in its simplicity. What other problems have you experienced with wands? Well, Harry scratched his head. I've had my wand taken and used for purposes that I would not approve, so some sort of security feature would be nice. Anything else? The professor asked as to write notes frantically. I can't think of anything else. Harry shrugged, then added with a laugh. Though you could look up ministry regulations and find ways circumvent everyone they have concerning wands. Thank you for your excellent suggestions, Mr. Black. And now that our business is concluded, would you care to dine with us? I'd be delighted. Harry nodded to his two new friends. Where do you suggest we go? Thoughts on France from Harry's book, Everything You Will Ever Need to Know While Traveling Around the World. France is a wonderful country, and in it you can find many wonderful things. From the lights of Paris to the beaches of the Riviera, you can have many unique experiences in this delightful country. However, there are a few things that one should know before embarking on your trip to France. Among these things is the fact that the agony curse, a curse that is similar to the cruciatus curse, is illegal to perform within the borders of France. Another illegal charm is the mask charm, a charm that when cast makes it difficult to track the individual wand signatures needed by Aurors to help solve crimes. In short, there are a lot of spells that are illegal to perform in France, spells that for one reason or another are legal to perform in many other countries. What follows is a complete list of spells forbidden in France, complete with incantations and wand movements. This list is cross-referenced with the in other country sections and should be studied for academic purposes only. 5. In which we meet the intrepid reporter, Mrs. White. It was a particularly overcast day when the postman made one of his rare trips up a walkway belonging to the house of one of the more unusual people on his route. A man whose eccentricities was rivaled only by that of a family of redheads on one of the neighboring routes. Knocking cautiously, the government servant wondered idly what sort of nonsensical conversation the odd man would attempt to drag him into this time. Would it be a dissertation on the possible existence of crumple-horned snooks or a theory that one of the ministers was a surgically altered monkey? Sighing in annoyance, he walked the last few steps to the threshold and knocked on the door. Yes. A confused-looking middle-aged man answered the door immediately. Is it time to buy a box of Scout biscuits again? No, sir, the postman forced a smile. I'm here to deliver your letter, not sell you something to eat with your tea. Oh, yes. The man's eyes lit with comprehension. I forgot that you're still not using trained animals to do it for you. Not yet, Mr. Lovegood. The postman agreed through pursed lips. My job is a bit too complicated to give to a trained animal. Well, give it time, Laodice Lovegood replied sympathetically. I'm sure you'll figure out the trick to it soon. Well, I really must get back on my rounds, the postman said, abruptly ending the conversation. And don't forget that you can always come into town and get your mail there. You don't always have to take the time waiting for me to arrive. Nonsense. Laodice waved it off with a smile. I'm sure that you'd miss the wonderful conversations that we always find ourselves engaging in. I'm sure, the postman agreed in disappointment, then turned to begin the short walk back to the road. Laodice smirked as he watched the man leave. Always keep them confused. Keep them confused, that was his motto. Make it so they never notice that they forgot to ask you any important questions, like, What are you doing in my bedroom? Or, you're looking for what? Resisting the urge to chuckle until after he had closed the door, the patriarch of the Lovegood clan glanced at the return to block to get some idea of the contents of the letter. Blinking at the unfamiliar name, Laodice tore open the letter and stared dumbly at the pictures within. "Luna," he called in a whisper. Clearing his voice, the next summons came at a yell. "Luona, come quickly." "What is it, fathers?" The young girl blinked in confusion. "Is it National Yell for Your Daughter Day?" "There is no National Yell for Your Daughter Day." His lips pursed in annoyance. "Those close-minded idiots at the ministry rejected our proposal for it last year." "I know. I was hoping that they had reconsidered and decided to approve it," Luna answered sweetly. "If that wasn't it, then what? Look at these pictures." He handed them to his little girl. "And tell me what you think." "Oh, father," Luna bounced in excitement. "I just knew we'd find proof eventually." "I know, and I can't wait to see the looks on people's faces when they see this in tomorrow's edition." Laodice allowed himself to share his daughter's excitement. "But let's find out a few things about this black fellow before we write up the article." "I thought you said that checking facts was a waste of time for a serious paper like ours." Luna gave her father a puzzled look. That even without bothering to confirm the details, we were still better than the prophet. "Human interest, my lovely daughter." Laodice's smile brightened. "The people will want to know more about this black fellow, how he discovered the creatures, what kind of person he is, that sort of thing." "I see." Luna nodded solemnly. "Looks like I have a lot to learn before I can call myself a journalist of your caliber." "Nonsense." Laodice waved it off. "Why, you're 100 times the reporter that I was at your age, and that's why I want you to write this story." "Me?" Luna clasped her hands in front of her chest. "But father, it's such an important story. Shouldn't you give it to one of your best reporters?" "I am giving it to one of my best reporters." He put his hand on her on the shoulder. "I want you to talk to someone at the Dutch consulate and try to get as many details about this black fellow as you can. Don't worry if you can't get anything right away. What matters is that we get a story out fast." "I'll get right on it." Luna smiled. "Thank you, father." "Get to it, Lovegood." Laodice's eyes hardened. "I'm not paying you to slack off." "Yes, sir, Mr. Editor Lovegood, sir." Luna nodded happily. "Reporter Lovegood is on the case." "Then get to it, Lovegood." Laodice turned and began to walk away. "I have a deadline to make." "Bye, Daddy." Luna tossed a handful of flue powder into the fire. "I'll be back soon." For several moments, Luna squealed in delight as she felt herself spin wildly around the flue network until finally she flew out of the fireplace and into the magical section of the Dutch embassy to England. "Name?" a stern-looking man asked with a bland expression. "Luna Lovegood, reporter for the Quibbler, and I have a few questions I'd like you to answer," she replied with an excited smile. "What sort of questions, Miss Lovegood?" "Oh, wait," Luna asked with a look of dismay. "Can we do that again?"
"Oh."
"'Kay," the man agreed, shooting her a strange look. "Name?" "Ms. White, reporter for the Quibbler." Luna shot him a superior look. "And I have a few questions that I need answered." "Ms. White?" the man inquired with a raised eyebrow. "It gives a sense of mystery," Luna giggled, "and the stern look puts you off balance, making you more likely to answer questions without considering the consequences." "So, how did you like it? Was I mysterious enough?" "If you like," the man shrugged. "What sort of questions would you like me to answer?" "I need to know about a man that goes by the name." Luna paused for dramatic effect. "Mr. Black." "I don't." The man trailed off. "This way, please." Did my tough but approachable method of asking questions make you decide to leak a bit of confidential information that you would not have otherwise revealed? Luna asked with an innocent expression. "Please step into this room." The man waved her towards an open door. "Someone will be with you momentarily." "Oh," Luna nodded in understanding. "Word of my presence has reached an unnamed senior official that has decided to leak some high-level information to me." "Something like that," The man shot her an odd look before closing the door and leaving. Taking a seat, Luna entertained herself by singing the Hogwarts song in Pig Latin. After her 35th repetition, the door cracked open. Ms. Love.
White.
An attractive-looking woman in nondescript robes entered the room. My name is Evander Midger, and I've been told that you have a few questions for me? Yes, Luna nodded happily. I was wondering what you could tell me about him. Aside from what I observed when I spoke with him after the incident, not much. The woman admitted with a shrug. What do you want to know first? First, why don't you tell me your account of the incident? Luna asked evenly, fighting to keep the disinterest out of her voice. Father always did say that a good reporter hides their interest by allowing the interviewee to think that they controlled the situation. I was part of the team that responded to the call, and when we arrived we found Mr. Black standing over 4 Death Eaters. Vander Midger gave a cold smile. Forensics confirmed that Black put them all down before they even had a chance to get a spell off. I didn't realize that he was so skilled. Luna had to bite the inside of her cheek to keep from laughing. What are some of your perceptions of the man? I don't know which country he came from, but he's a professional. Vander Midger shook her head. I had the chance to talk with him after he gave his report, and he gave me some good advice on how to deal with death munchers. Put them down, keep them down, and never turn you back. I see. Luna nodded, and fighting to keep the interest from her voice, asked her next question. Did you by chance have a chance to see what his diet consisted of? I'm not sure, but I think that I recall him having some sort of meat dish when I had lunch with him. The woman replied in an off-handed manner, but why are you asking about that? About what? Asked innocently, as she forced her eyes to focus on a point 3 feet behind the woman. Never mind. The Dutch law enforcement officer shot a strange look at Luna. What else do you want to know? Well, Luna began slowly, trying to decide if the time was right for another of her fake questions. What sort of organization do you think that he works for? Law enforcement? Department of Magical Creatures? I don't think that he's an or. Vander Midger replied after a moment of thought. Law enforcement is a small community, and I'm sure I would have heard about someone like him before he appeared in Amsterdam. I see, Luna nodded. So, do you think that he works for the Department of Magical Creatures? I don't think he works for the Department of Magical Creatures, Vander Midger answered flatly. Whenever we asked, he just replied that he was nobody special, that he was just a man on vacation. I think that he might be something like one of your unspeakables, or possibly something that we've never even heard of. Okay. Luna nodded happily. Was he missing any of the fingers on his right hand? Or did he have an extra finger on his left? Not that I noticed, the Dutch woman answered. Nor did I notice any other distinguishing marks. Did he speak with an accent that you could recognize? He spoke perfect Dutch with a Harlem accent, and he was later heard to speak perfect Swedish with a Stockholm accent. The Dutch woman gave a tight smile. And finally, one of my associates has confirmed that he speaks perfect French with a Paris accent. Whoever trained this man did a very good job. I see. Luna gathered up her assorted notes and resolved to end with one of her useless questions. I have one more question before I wrap things up. Just how good is he? He's so good it's scary. He spotted every one of our tails with little or no effort. Vander Midger gave Luna a serious look. If I were a criminal and I learned that he was coming after me, I'd turn myself in and hope like hell that they gave me a nice long stay in prison where it would be too inconvenient to come get me. Thank you for your time, Ms. Vander Midger. Luna gave the Dutch woman a vacant smile. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a story to write. Luna's mind was awash with thoughts as she tumbled out of the Flu network and into her house. Father. What is it, Luna? The man asked as he entered the room. Did you get the interview? Yes, Father, and I learned some rather shocking news. Yes. Laodice asked with a raised eyebrow. It appears that all of our theories were wrong, Luna replied quickly. I have reason to believe that Mr. Black was not on a diet consisting of nothing but rutabagas and goat cheese before he took the picture. Mr. Black was not missing a finger on his right hand, and he did not have an extra finger on his left hand. Luna took a deep breath. Last of all, he did not speak with a pronounced Monrovia accent. I see. Laertes pursed his lips. It appears that our theories about the specific requirements that needed to be met before seeing a crumple-horned Snorlax were in error. Could it be that we were just looking in the wrong place? Luna asked innocently. Remember, sometimes the simple answers are the correct ones. It's possible, Laertes admitted, but I think the situation might be a bit more complicated than it first appears. Well, we still have a few hours before the story needs to be written. Luna patted her father on the shoulder. Plenty of time to go over my transcripts of the interview to find out what the real answer is. The two of them immediately went to work, scrutinizing every word and remark made by the Dutch woman, weighing every statement against the facts that they knew to be true, until finally, I think that I've figured it out, father. Luna closed her eyes, and I was correct. It was so simple that I almost disregarded it. What is it? Laertes leaned forward, eager to hear his daughter's thoughts. What do you know happens in the Department of Mysteries? I know of quite a few things. Why? He asked with a look of interest. But it's supposed to be the most secure place in our world. Luna began to smile. So why do you know what happens within its walls? And while we are on the subject, how is it that a bunch of school children were able to break in?
Well,
his eyes widened. You're not suggesting? Exactly. Luna nodded triumphantly. The Department of Mysteries is nothing more than a false lead, something to keep people from considering the existence of the real secret. Another department, Laertes smiled in approval. A department so secret that no hint of its existence has ever reached the public. Until now, Luna nodded. It is my guess that this unnamed department discovered the circumstances needed to see the crumple-horned Snorlax, and then sent this man, Mr. Black, to cast some sort of spell to allow normal people to see them. I think you may be onto something. Laertes stroked his chin, but it still doesn't explain why he worked so openly. I think that we're going to have to assume that he was telling the truth. Luna pointed to the appropriate section of the transcript. He's a man on vacation, possibly after his retirement. He doesn't care so much about secrecy at the moment. Crumple-horned Snorlax found in Holland. By Mrs. White. It has long been the Quibbler's assertion that there are mysteries yet to be solved and creatures yet to be discovered. This refusal of ours to accept the commonly held view has long been cause for ridicule among the quote mainstream media. Who is Mr. Black? By E. Nigma. Very little is known about the man that is responsible for the pictures that grace the front of this newspaper. We do know that he is a man of exceptional skill and cunning, as evidenced by an incident in Holland in which Mr. Black defeated 4 Death Eaters before they had a chance to cast a spell. 6. A series of fortunate events. A series of fortunate events. Thanks for the meal, Professor. Harry turned to wave to his dining companions as he walked towards the line of waiting cabs. And good luck with your inventions. Thank you again for your help, Mr. Black. The professor smiled. And don't forget to meet up with us in Germany. I won't. Harry nodded as stepped into the first cab. Goodbye. Goodbye. Henchgirl waved until the cab turned a corner and faded from sight. Do you think we'll ever see him again, Professor? It's hard to say, Henchgirl. The professor sighed. He may decide that it's best not to draw us into his world. As Henchgirl and the professor continued their conversation about the mysterious Mr. Black, across the street a similar conversation was taking place between a striking young woman and her dog. Stepped into the first cab. The beautiful young woman gave a rather unladylike snort. Looks like the Dutch were having us on. Nobody with any training would make a mistake as simple as that. It's the first thing they teach you in training. Which is why we didn't bother to place tracking charms on it. By getting into that cab, he's showing us why it's never a good idea to cut corners. Her poodle replied dryly, Face it, kid. We're up against the best. That assumption seems to rely on the reports about his prowess being true. The woman smirked. Looks to me like you're twisting things to fit your pet theory. 6 months out of training and they think they know everything. The dog shook his head in despair. Tell me then, oh wise one, what did he do immediately after stepping out of the restaurant? He said goodbye to the people that he ate with. The woman spoke slowly as if to a child. Then he stepped into the first cab. He used that as an excuse to look around, and he looked right at us. The dog corrected. What did he do after that? He exchanged a few words with the aforementioned people. The woman bit her lower lip, then got into a taxi. When he turned back from his greeting, his eyes swept over the line of waiting cabs, and somehow he was able to pick the one car that you didn't hit with tracking spells. I didn't spell the last 3 either. The girl shrugged. I still don't think it proves anything, and I don't see what the big deal about him looking at us was. He looked at you, smirked, and looked at me. The dog clarified. He did a few other things that gave him away, but those were the major points, and we'll talk about the rest later. Oh, the woman looked down at the dog in shock. So, he's really that good? Yes, he is. The dog nodded. Now what have we learned today? That we should always track the first cab. The woman nodded slowly. Know that we should never leave a hole no matter how small. And that no matter how good you are, there is always someone better. One more thing. The dog gave a canine smile. The most dangerous ones always try their hardest to look harmless. Is that why you insisted that I groom you and tie a pink bow around your neck before we went on this assignment? Yees. The poodle Animagus agreed quickly. Glad that you're finally starting to learn how the world works. In any case, we'll find out how good he is after we search his rooms. The woman shot the poodle a sly grin. I'll bet that he won't notice any signs of our presence. We'll see. The poodle sighed. Now let's go. We have an early morning tomorrow, and I would like to get a bit of sleep first. Harry again awoke early, and his day was filled with wondrous sights. La Musée d'Armis in the morning, and the Folies Bergère at the Moulin Rouge in the evening. And so, head filled with the sights, sounds, and smells that he had experienced in his wonderful day of discovery. Harry returned to his hotel room for another night of rest. The next day, Harry quickly discovered that after the first few days of sightseeing, his enthusiasm for experiencing new things was quickly being dampened by his hatred of standing in lines. And after spending 2 hours waiting, he amused himself with the thought that Paris should have its motto changed from the City of Lights to the City of Lines due to the fact that there was a large queue of tourists lined up to see virtually everything of any interest. That's it, Harry muttered to himself as he gave up his place in the line to enter the Louvre. I am not in the mood for this. Returning to his hotel room, Harry wasted no time returning the few loose items to their place in his pack. I'm checking out. Harry gave a strained smile to the man behind the desk as he returned the key to his room. Is there something wrong? The clerk asked quickly. You didn't have any problems with our service, did you? Nothing wrong with the service, Harry assured the man. Then why? Let's just say, I don't have the patience needed to see more of Paris, Harry replied, ending the conversation. Walking out of his former hotel and hailed a cab. Take me to Gare de Lyon. Harry ordered the driver as he leaned back in the seat, trying to enjoy the next leg of his journey. Not long after Harry checked out of his hotel, a group of shadowy figures gathered around a large table to meet and discuss possible implications of Mr. Black's latest moves. Well, what were you able to learn by going through Mr. Black's things? Asked the figure at the head of the table. We learned that it is entirely possible that Mr. Black has a type of perimeter charm that we were unable to even detect. One of the figures at the side of the table replied. Within moments of our Black Bag team entering his hotel room, they had to abort on orders of the observation team. The observation team leader took over. Mr. Black muttered, That's it, and I'm not in the mood for this. He then hailed a cab and ordered the driver to return him to his hotel. And it was then that we ordered the abort, the woman paused. I think that it would be prudent note that he hailed was the one that I was driving. I see. The man at the head of the table nodded thoughtfully. What is the current status of Mr. Black? He is checked out of his hotel room, and is currently in Gare de Lyon. The head of the observation team replied quickly. What prompted his departure? The figure at the head of the table asked with a raised eyebrow. He informed the hotel clerk that he didn't have the patience needed to see more of Paris. We speculate that Mr. Black was annoyed by our intrusion into his room and decided to cut his time in our city. Annoyed? The figure at the head of the table motioned for clarification. Yes, the observation team leader confirmed. His manner gave nothing to suggest anger, rather. She paused, rather similar to my reaction when I had discovered that my 3-year-old daughter had decided to draw on the wall with crayon. I need a ticket for the next train leaving for Marseille, Harry told the cashier, not noticing as his accent shifted to match his destination. One moment, sir. The cashier nodded. Here you are. Your train will be leaving within the hour. Thank you. Harry nodded politely as he took the ticket. I trust that your associates will have a good day. Yes, sir. The ticket agent nodded back, hiding his surprise. Will you be requiring anything else?
No.
It did not take long for Harry to find his train, and stowing his pack, he closed his eyes and allowed himself to transition into the world of dream. Harry pulled himself from the land of dreams as the train began to slow. Shaking his head to awake fully, Harry pulled the travel guide from his rucksack and began to read. Marseille, at nearly 2,600 years old, is considered by many to be the oldest city in France. There are many interesting things that can be learned about the city and its past. But since you bought this book, then it can be assumed that you don't care about any of that. On to the fun stuff. The main magical sections of Marseille are located off the section of town known as Le Vieux-Port and can be reached through several places which are listed in an appendix at the end of this section. The most discreet of these is a small alley located between an old drinking establishment named Le Lion and another old drinking establishment named L'Unicorn. The alley runs for several meters before opening up into the crossroads of the Rue de la Malle Absolue, also known as the Rue de Chiat and the Rue de la Saint-Tite. Closing the book, Harry took his first look out the window at the city of Marseille, taking in the wonder of visiting another location. Stepping off the train, Harry raised his hand to hail the nearest cab. Where to? Take me to the best hotel nearby. Harry paused. After that, I have somewhere else that I'd like to go if you're willing to wait. I'm willing. The cab driver nodded as he pulled out into traffic. What brings you to our city? Just taking a bit of time to relax, Harry shrugged. Sounds nice. What you do? Nothing important. Harry sidestepped the question. How do you like your jobs? I find it very enjoyable, the driver nodded. Every day I get to meet new people and learn new things. I see, Harry nodded. And how are the working conditions? They're all right, good benefits. What about you? How are your conditions? Not as safe as one might wish. Harry turned up his hands. But what can you do? Not much, I'd guess. Just got to learn to go with the flow. So where did you go before coming here? Paris? How long did you stay? Not long. Had to cut my visit short, Harry answered quickly. Why? Lack of patience. Harry straightened up as the cab pulled to a stop in front of a hotel. I hope I don't have any reason to cut short my visit to Marseille. I'm sure you won't, Mr. Black, the driver mumbled to himself as he watched his fare walk into the hotel lobby. You made your point in Paris. The driver waited for several minutes for his client to reappear. Take me to Le Vieux-Port, Harry commanded as he got back into the cab. There are a few places that I'd like to visit before we run out of daylight. Right away. Any particular place? A small pub called Le Lion, if you know where that is. I do, sir. The driver nodded. The remainder of the ride passed in silence, as the driver did not wish to annoy his passenger. Here we are, sir, the driver told his passenger as the cab slid to a halt. Thank you. Harry stepped out. And have a nice day. You too. Thank you, sir. Harry walked towards the two old drinking establishments that marked one of the entrances to Wizard's section of Marseille. Frowning in concentration when no alley presented itself, Harry took a step closer and resisted the urge to blink in surprise when the alley appeared. taking an experimental step back. Harry blinked when the alley disappeared. Shrugging his shoulders, Harry stepped forward and entered the alley. The light began to fade, and the air began to chill as Harry walked deeper and deeper into the alleyway. Stopping, Harry allowed his senses to explore his surroundings and caught a bit of movement in the corner of his eye was his only warning that he was not alone. Situational awareness, the act of knowing your exact location in relation to your everything around you in a conflict situation. Harry had developed his at an early age. Urged on by the fact that one wrong move would earn him a beating and a missed meal, he quickly learned to always be aware of his surroundings, and years of Quidditch had only served to sharpen that awareness. Reflexively turning to get a closer look, Harry hissed as he felt a sharp pain in his back. "I don't know how you managed to move fast enough to stay alive." A dirty-looking man holding a large bloody knife and dressed in rags leered evilly, "but I don't think you can do it twice." A deep rage began to build as Harry stared at the blood-covered knife, and a wave of accidental magic shot from the hands that Harry had instinctively raised. Nobody move. Harry's shadows arrived just in time to watch a wave of force throw Harry's attacker into the alley's wall. Wand drawn, one of the men carefully approached the fallen figure. Kicking the bloody knife out of reach, he bent down to check the man's pulse. Dead. Broken neck. One of the figures relaxed upon hearing the announcement and approached the still-standing Harry. "Are you all right, sir?" "I'm not sure." Harry reached back to probe his injury. "I think I've been stabbed, but I can't tell how serious it is." "I'm a healer. Do you mind if I take a look then, sir?" "Go ahead." Harry nodded and lifted his shirt to allow easy access. "How does it look?" "Give me a moment." The healer gently probed the wound with her finger. "Doesn't look like anything serious was hit. Give me a few moments to close it up and you'll be good as new." "Thank you." Harry nodded in appreciation. Sorry to interrupt. Another of the law enforcement officers commented quietly, "but do you mind if I ask you a few questions while the healer takes a look at your wound?" "Go ahead. I just wanted to compliment you on how fast you arrived." "Almost as if you were following me around," Harry joked. "Yes, well, should we start?" the man stammered. "Sure, what do you want to know?" "Why don't you tell me what happened?" "I was walking down the alley. I stopped, saw something out of the corner of my eye, and got stabbed." Harry gave a weak grin. "Then I turned. The man made some sort of threat, and I used accidental magic to throw him into the wall." "I see." The man made several notes. "Why didn't you use your wand?" "It all happened so fast that I didn't have time to pull it out." Harry managed a weak smile, "and I guess that it's a good thing I didn't. Otherwise, I might be guilty of violating the laws against practicing magic in front of non-magical people." "I wouldn't worry about that, Mr. Black." The man looked down at his notes. "Seems your attacker was carrying an enchanted dagger and a few other enchanted items. Still, he could have just picked them up by accident, and I always try to stay on the right side of the law." "I see." The man made a few more notes. "Just for the sake of my curiosity, I'm wondering if you would allow me to ask one more question?" "What's that?" "Why don't you think the self-defense exemption would protect you from performing magic against your assailant?" "Because I've had too much experience dealing with incompetent and corrupt officials," Harry shrugged innocently. "So I think that it's better for all concerned that I used accidental magic rather than my wand." "I see. Thank you, Mr. Black." The man closed his notebook. "You've been most helpful." "No problem." Harry smiled. "Glad to be of help." "Goodbye, Mr. Black." "Goodbye." Harry nodded and then turned to the healer tending to his wound. "How does it look?" "I'll give you a couple potions to drink and you'll be just fine." "Thanks, you've all been so helpful and nice." Harry smiled, even the interviewer. His technique was so calm and relaxed that I don't even remember telling him my name. "Oh," the healer smiled nervously. "I'm sure that he'll be glad to hear that. Would you mind waiting here for a moment?" The woman gave a weak laugh. "I need to go talk to my boss about a few things." "No problem," Harry agreed. "Anything to make your life less difficult." Thank you. The healer turned and began walking quickly toward a group of gathered people. How's Mr. Black doing? Knife missed by about 3 centimeters. The healer winced as she recalled treating the wound. I'd say this Mr. Black is either very lucky or that he's some of the best reflexes that I've ever seen. I see. The nondescript man grunted. Did you notice any signs of past injuries? Several. The healer turned to her notes. Multiple scars, broken bones, and some odd readings on his blood. Explain odd. I'd really like to get it to the lab before I commit myself. The women hedged. I just want a preliminary report. He held his hand up. Nobody is going to blame you if you make a mistake here. Well, she bit her lower lip. I was a bit worried that the blade could have been poisoned, so I hit it with a minor detection spell. And the reading were off the charts. The woman frowned. According to what I was seeing, there was enough poison on the blade to kill 100 men. There was no way that Mr. Black could have been walking around. So you miscast your spell. So what? That's what I thought. So I tried again using a much more accurate spell. The results were shocking. She took a calming breath. It wasn't the blade that the blade was poisoned. It's that Mr. Black's blood contains some sort of deadly toxin. That caused me to look closer, and what I found. I can't even begin to explain. I see. The nondescript man licked his lips. Anything else? Mr. Black also mentioned that Pierre slipped up and forgot to ask his name. The healer grinned. He also complimented us on how fast we arrived, said it was almost as if we'd been following him. Certainly has a sense of humor, doesn't he? The nondescript man grinned. Anything to add, Pierre? You've all heard my report. The man who interviewed Harry replied, I would like to ask how Mr. Black knew of this entrance. It's not exactly well known and hasn't seen much use since it was built by the Maquis. Good question. I'd also like to know how his target knew about this place. Do you have anything else to add? No, sir. Then does anyone have anything else to add? His question was met by silence. Then can anyone explain why a 2-bit thug was able to injure a man as good as we think Mr. Black is? I might have an idea. A young woman cradling a poodle replied. Well then, through all of our dealings with Mr. Black, one thing shines through. She scratched behind her partner's ear. Mr. Black likes to act dumb. The one time he showed what he was capable of was when we annoyed him by entering his hotel room. Go on. We heard Pierre's report. Mr. Black arranged everything to make it look like a clear-cut case of self-defense and an accidental death. When we entered his hotel room, we confused him. He wasn't sure how to react to us, so he set up a situation that would get us laughed out of court if we tried to send him to prison. She glanced down at her partner to see an approving nod. He made everything look like some sort of strange coincidence, and it frightens me to think that he was able to set this up under our noses in such a small amount of time. The level of professionalism that such a task would require boggles the mind. Then why do you think he chose that man as his target? I might have an idea, sir. The woman licked her lips. Forensics found the blood of several magical people on the dead man's clothing. It would look like he was targeting wizards. It is my guess that Mr. Black somehow learned of his activities and decided to execute him. Execute? What else would you call it? He calmly walked into the alley with the express purpose of killing that man, and he was able to make it look like some sort of bizarre accident. Like I said, if we ever tried to bring this case to court, we'd be laughingstocks. The woman shrugged. For one reason or another, Mr. Black didn't trust us to capture this man, and he was unsure of our reaction if he took matters into his own hands, so he manufactured this. Sounds like the most reasonable explanation anybody's come up with so far. The nondescript man nodded. He's made his point, so with any luck, he won't be so condescending when he does something like this in the future. Unless anybody has anything else to add, this meeting is over. Send Mr. Black on his way. I'll do it, sir. The healer volunteered. I'd like to hit him with a stronger diagnostic charm. Might help me make more sense of what I found in his blood. Fine. But don't annoy him Any more than we already have. No problem. The healer nodded happily and walked back towards Mr. Black. How did your meeting go? Harry smiled at the approaching healer. Fine. The boss says that you can leave any time you want. She took a deep breath. But I'd like your permission to cast a few charms on you to get a better idea of your vital signs. Okay. The woman made several complicated wand movements and muttered several rather odd incantations and finished with a rather distracted look. Finished? Harry asked with a small smile. Yeah, sure. The woman responded with a dazed look. Anything I need to worry about? Nothing seems to be bothering you. The healer looked at her results again. I'll just be going then. As he left, Harry was sure that he heard the woman mutter, "None of this makes any sense," but he chalked it up to his overactive imagination and continued on his way. 7. It's in the blood. Harry sat in his hotel room staring at the walls. He had killed again, and he was unsure of how he was supposed to feel about the fact that he had taken another life. I don't feel guilty, Harry mused to himself. It was him or me, and I'd rather it be him or me. I don't feel guilty about it, but I also don't really want to stay around here any longer. Harry stood up and packed the few items that he had removed from his ruck, and after taking one last look around the room to make sure that he hadn't forgotten anything, Harry walked down to the lobby and checked out. I've got another assignment for you, Lovegood. The editor of the Quibbler glared at his favorite reporter. Folks loved that article you wrote about Mr. Black, so I'm assigning you to write another. Okay, Daddy. I mean Chief. Luna gave a left-handed salute. Reporter Lovegood is on the case. Black killed a man in Marseille. I want to know everything about what happened. The editor frowned. And none of that lone wolf stuff. The commissioner's been on my ass all week about that bus you blew up. I thought that we were reporters, not cops. Luna blinked at her father. Have you been taking your medicine again, Daddy? We ran out of every flavor beans, and my medicine has a candy coating. Luna's father looked down at his shoes. Besides, it was so far past its expiration date that I thought it would be fine. Well, don't take any more of it. Luna put her hands on her hips. You know it gives you crazy ideas? I'm sorry, honey. He blushed. It won't happen again. It's okay, Daddy. Now get out there and get me that story, Lovegood. I don't pay you to sit around. The Quibbler's editor stormed out of the room, and if you have the time, could you get me a new box of candies? Okay, Daddy. Reporter Lovegood is on it. Luna walked over to the fireplace and tossed in a handful of flue powder, French magical law enforcement Marseille. And after a few minutes of waiting, hello, Luna squinted at the fire. Is anyone there? My name is Pierre-Louis Boulanger. A man in an impeccably tailored robe answered the fire moments later. The press information officer of magical law enforcement. What can I do for you? Yes, my name is. Luna took a few minutes to think up an appropriate alias. Misinformation, and I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions about Mr. Black. One moment. Pierre-Louis stalled for time as he tried to think of the best spin to put on the story. All right, please ask your questions. What exactly happened? For some months, we've been tracking the movement of a serial killer targeting the magical community. Pierre-Louis licked his lips. The statement was a bit false, as they had no prior indication of the killer's existence before Mr. Black killed him. Turns out the man was a squib using the old resistance tunnels and alleyways. Go on. Luna resisted the urge to smirk. It was so easy to get information if they were convinced that you already knew everything. We're not sure how, but Mr. Black was able to track the man's movements. He gave a shy smile. Mr. Black confronted the man and Luna prompted. And he stalled for time trying to remember what had happened next, and Mr. Black knocked the knife out of the way and broke the man's neck. What spell did he use to break the man's neck? Spell. Pierre-Louis began to sweat. He had gotten his position as a press officer more on the merits of how splendid. He looked in his robes than for any other reason. Mr. Black used no spell. He broke the man's neck with his bare hands. Oh, Luna looked impressed. What else can you tell me about the incident? Well, we've been looking through the old records, and we've found that the murderer knew about the old resistance places. Because his father had been a member, he smiled as a new thought rose to the surface. But that still leaves us with one unanswered question regarding the incident. What's that? How did Mr. Black know so much about the resistance network? The man leaned close to the fire. What I'm about to tell you must not be attributed to me. If you chose to use it, you must attribute it to an unnamed senior source. If you think that's best, Luna gave her best trusting smile. There has been some speculation that Mr. Black knew of them because he used them when they were most needed. The man took a deep breath. Many of us believe that Mr. Black may have been one of the men that was sent to help the resistance, to fight the forces of tyranny. Wow. Luna tried to make herself look impressed. Does the French government plan to reward Mr. Black in any way for his courage? I've been told that he stands a good chance of being inducted into the Ordre National de la Légion d'honneur. With the rank of chevalier, the man gave his most charming smile. Nothing is too good for the man that rid us of such a terrible killer. I see, Luna nodded. When did Mr. Black leave France? Leave. Pierre-Louis blinked. To the best of my knowledge, he's still here.
What?
Luna shot up from her seat. Please move aside. I'll be coming through momentarily. Hastily moving aside, Pierre-Louis narrowly avoided the excited reporter. Was there some reason that you chose to continue our interview in person? Quick, Luna's eyes acquired a maniacal gleam. You must show me the way to Mr. Black's hotel room. Flinching at the look in the crazed reporter's eyes, Pierre-Louis was quick to agree and arranged transportation for the two of them. What room is Mr. Black in? Luna shouted to her escort as they ran towards the hotel entrance. None of them. A woman with a poodle called out, halting Luna's advance. What do you mean? Luna fought to keep her disappointment from showing. He checked out and left about 15 minutes ago. The woman shrugged. You just missed him. Oh, Luna blinked and turned to her escort. Then could you show me the alley where Mr. Black had his fight? Before you go, the woman with the poodle interrupted. Would you mind telling me how long you've been planning to come here to interview Mr. Black? About 15 minutes. Luna looked around with a dazed expression. Ever since I found out he was still here. Thank you. The woman nodded politely. Guess that answers the question of why he left, the poodle commented to his partner, but it still leaves the question of how he knew that she was coming. Looks like he either has a way of intercepting flow, or he's bugged the office. The woman speculated. The man is a god, the poodle commented in awe. We gotta get back to the office. The woman ignored her partner's loss of composure. The healer is about to give her report on what she found. Activate the port key. The poodle nodded. I can't wait to find out what she was able to learn. In 3, 2, 1. The two of them felt the pull of the port key, and seconds later they appeared beside a large table. Good of you two to show up. The man sitting at the tables had motioned towards a pair of seats.
Now that
everyone is here, I believe the healers would like to share their preliminary reports. Thank you, sir. The healer nodded. As many of you may know, I found something odd when I tested Mr. Black's
blood.
It appeared to contain a deadly toxin, so, after obtaining Mr. Black's permission, I cast a series of diagnostic charms. And the results were astounding. Mr. Black has at one time or another broken nearly all the bones in his body, and at some time in the near past he had to regrow all of the bones in one of his arms. He is covered in scars, many of which were caused by the darkest of magic. And as I said before, his blood is rather odd. I've spent nearly the entire afternoon testing the sample that I recovered from the blade of the knife, and I believe that I may have a partial explanation of why it is so toxic. Go on. At some time in the past, Mr. Black must have deliberately injected himself with a massive dose of basilisk venom mixed with phoenix tears. The woman rechecked her notes. The tears counteracted the venom's toxicity, which is the reason that Mr. Black is not dead. I was unsure of why he did this until I noticed that the phoenix tears didn't have the same amount of potency as I would expect from a fresh sample. So, I double-checked the blood sample. I noticed that while the phoenix tears had gotten weaker, the basilisk venom maintained its potency, and my results showed that Mr. Black should have only a few months to live because of the tears losing their effectiveness. So what you're saying is that Mr. Black is dying? No, that's what my first thought was until I started checking the data from my diagnostic charms, and they showed that he was healthier than one would expect after looking at his medical history. Somehow his body had adapted to the presence of the basilisk venom, possibly by absorbing the magic of the phoenix tears. So it appears that the poison in his system will never be a problem. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me to learn that Mr. Black won't ever have to worry about most poisons. I was happy to see that my first conclusions were mistaken and that Mr. Black was not going to die, but one thing still bothered me.
What was that?
Why did the potency of the phoenix tears lessen while the potency basilisk venom remained constant? The woman looked around the room. One would think that there would be at least some change in the toxicity levels. That's when I found this. She tossed out a piece of parchment with a grainy image on it. It appears that Mr. Black implanted a small chip of basilisk falling into the bones on one of his arms. This has the effect keeping his blood from becoming any less deadly. Good work. The man at the head of the table nodded. Do you have anything else to add? One more thing. The woman nodded. I know what he did. I have some idea of how he did it, but I don't know why he did it. Imagine a man that can never be disarmed. Imagine an assassin that can bite his lip to access a rather large supply of some of the most dangerous poison in the known world. The figure shook his head. The dedication this shows is amazing. I have one more thing to add then, sir. The healer paled as she considered the implications of her superior's statement. Whoever designed this process must have been insane. I can't even imagine the amount of precision needed to ensure that the proper dosages were applied at the proper times. Whoever this Mr. Black is and whoever he works for, they operate on a whole different level than we can even imagine. Elsewhere, Albus Dumbledore was presiding over a meeting of the Order of the Phoenix. I have some new orders for you in regards to the search for Harry Potter. Dumbledore took a deep breath. I have been accused of treating Harry as an object, and it has been said that even if we did find Harry and return him to his family's house, then we would be forced to maintain a 24-hour guard on Mr. Potter to prevent him from disappearing again. The headmaster's statements were met by several mutters, and the old man held up his hand for silence. I am not suspending the search for Mr. Potter. I am changing it. If you find him, inform the order, so we can devote our resources to keeping him safe at his current location, an action which I hope will keep him happier than confining him with the Dursleys. Why can't we just bring him here? Molly asked, or to the Burrows? Those options remain open, Dumbledore nodded. But when the time comes, I am going to allow Harry to decide his residence. Molly sat, satisfied that whatever happened, the dear boy would be happy. Now that we have settled one issue, I believe Alastair has something else that he'd like to bring to our attention. Albus gave the floor to his old friend. Black struck again. Moody leered. This time he killed a serial killer in Marseille. The French seem to think that he has access to undetectable charms, and they speculate that he's either bugged their office or has found a way to monitor the flow. Why didn't we hear about this killer before? An anonymous member of the order asked. 'Cause the French didn't know about him till after Black executed him, Moody chuckled. Black set things up to look like an accident. Even used a bit of wandless magic, said it was accidental. Thank you, Alastair. That was most enlightening. Dumbledore looked around the room. I believe the next thing on our agenda is a report by George and Fred Weasley on one of their latest inventions. Harry got out of his taxi at the mouth of the alley where he had earlier killed a man and took a deep breath before stepping in. This attempt to visit the magical section of Marseille went much smoother than the last, and his trip through the alley went without incident. Could you tell me where I can buy a portkey out of the country? Harry politely asked the first passerby. Up the street about 50 meters, the now sweating agent replied quickly, store named Traveler's Return. Thank you. Harry began walking in the indicated direction. After a short walk, Harry found himself in front of a building covered with moving images of exotic locals. Can I help you? Harry heard a young voice ask from behind. I couldn't help but notice that you were staring at my store, and I was wondering if I might be of some assistance. I would like a portkey out of the country, Harry sighed. Whatever you have available is fine. I had a cancellation earlier, so I have one going to Monte Carlo in. The man checked his watch. 3 minutes. I'll take it. Harry nodded. How much? Since they cancelled at the last minute, the portkey was already paid for. The man shrugged, and my conscience will not allow me to sell the same item twice. Take it at no cost to yourself with my compliments. Thank you. Harry accepted a small round disc that he assumed to be a portkey. Have a good. Harry's statement was cut off by the familiar pull of a portkey taking him to the next stop on his journey. Would you like to place a bet, sir? Asked a man standing next to Harry, at the head of a roulette wheel. One moment. Harry blinked and took a moment to look at his luxurious surroundings. Could you repeat that? I was asking if you wished to place a bet with a chip in your hand, sir, replied the man at the roulette wheel. Sure. Harry dropped the chip on a random number. Thank you. You're most welcome, sir. The man nodded and then turned away to accept more bets. Shrugging and feeling no need to watch his lone chip disappear, Harry walked away from the table to explore his new surroundings. He could now add gambling to his short list of life experiences. It wasn't like he needed to stick around to know that he was going to lose, was it? Harry spent several minutes drifting around the floor of the casino before finding the exit, and several minutes after that, exploring the section of town that he had found himself in. Finally, after nearly an hour of exploration, he ended up in a seedy bar with a drink in his hand. The last thing he remembered was being challenged to a drinking contest by several Australian backpackers. Good afternoon, Mr. Black. A man in an odd yellow striped outfit greeted him. Are you feeling well? Who are you? Harry's mouth tasted like the floor of the leaky cauldron. And where am I? My name is Gunter Schmidt, a member of the Swiss Guard. The man nodded respectfully. You are in the holy city of the Vatican, and I have a problem that I hope you can help me solve. What's that? Harry closed his eyes and hoped for the world to stop spinning. I would like you to inspect some new wards that we're having put up, they replied calmly. We asked some of our contacts in the magical world for the name of a man that could be discreet, and we were given yours. I see. Harry clenched his teeth to keep his stomach from jumping through his throat. Why do you want me to inspect your wards? A man was once contracted to build something out of marble. This man was supposed to use stone of only the highest quality, but he did not. Instead, he bought stone of low quality and pocketed the difference. At the time, there was another man working in the same area. That man was widely regarded as one of the best artists of the age, and he was also regarded as the man that knew the most about stone. If anyone was to detect the substitution of low-quality stone, it would have been him. The guard shrugged, so the first man found a way to keep the second busy, and his crime went unnoticed. We do not intend to make the same mistake. I don't know anything about wards. Harry tried to sit up, and I have no idea on how to check them. You'll find a book on the end table next to your bed. In it is everything you need to know to perform the tasks we request of you. The guard stood and began walking towards the exit, and a uniform like mine is in the closet. If you chose to help us, then read the book and put on the uniform. If you decide not to, then knock on the door, and someone will arrive to escort you out. I'll think about it, Harry replied through clenched teeth. In the meantime, would you mind sending up a bottle of painkillers and some water? I'll have them send up a few things to help with your stomach too. The guard paused before leaving the room. Do you mind my asking why you were so drunk when we found you? 8. This thing of yours. Ever want to forget something so bad you don't care about the results? Harry sighed. I was thinking and I wanted to stop. In hindsight, there were better ways to do that, but I don't suppose that matters now. No, I don't suppose it does. Schmidt nodded. Thank you, Mr. Black. No problem. Harry tried opening his eyes and immediately regretted it, as it felt like 2 hot irons were being thrust through his eye sockets into his skull. I'll take a look at the book in a few minutes and give you my answer after that. All I ask is that you consider it, Schmidt replied, closing the door. How do I get myself into these situations? Harry asked himself as he finally managed to sit up. Might as well start. The first thing a wizard must learn if he is to become skilled at checking, removing, and placing wards is how to activate their mage sight. First, one must imagine magic gathering in the center of their body. Then one must, for lack of a better term, push the magic up through their body and into their eyes. After that, it is a simple matter of practice, and in time a skilled practitioner will be able to call upon their mage sight almost without effort. Seems easy enough, Harry mused to himself as he began to gather the necessary focus. And now I just... Argelmarther, he bit down on an agonizing scream. Perhaps it wasn't the best idea to increase the sensitivity of one's eyes when they felt like they had been used as the balls in a dozen games of ping-pong. Harry spent several minutes writhing on the floor before he managed to regain enough of himself to read the next sentence. Warning: do not attempt to do this if you are suffering from a hangover. Doing so will cause intense pain and will cause one or more of the following side effects: blindness, insanity, deafness, neurosis, death. In rare cases, it can sometimes grant the victim an advanced form of mage sight. Harry spent several more minutes cursing the authors of the book and their stupidity for placing such an important warning at the bottom of the page. Checking himself out, Harry was pleased to discover that he could not find any sign that he was blind, insane, deaf, suffering from neurosis, or dead. Shrugging his shoulders at his good fortune, Harry was distracted by a knock at the door. Yes. Got the things you requested, Mr. Black. Another man wearing an odd striped uniform pushed a cart into the room. I was also told to inform you that the wards that you're being asked to inspect are the arachne type. Thank you. Harry nodded, downing a handful of painkiller and antacids. Was there anything else you needed? No, Mr. Black. The man in the odd uniform left, closing the door behind himself. Turning back to the book on wards, Harry began to read. Arachne-type wards get their name from the fact that when viewed with mage sight, they appear to be a spider web emanating from a central key object. Like a spider web, these wards form complex patterns that must be mapped ahead of time. These maps will indicate the ward's intended purpose to a person skilled at placing wards and should be checked against the finished product to ensure that the pattern was not changed when the ward was placed. Arachne-type wards suffer from 2 major drawbacks. The first is that they are vulnerable to the destruction of their central key object. The second is that their range is limited to a radius of no more than a few kilometers from their center. Taking a few minutes to flip through the rest of the book, Harry was startled by another knock at the door. Come in. Harry looked up from his reading. Have you decided whether or not you were going to inspect our wards? Schmidt asked with a raised eyebrow. I'd be happy to, Harry agreed, on the condition that you get another person to check my results later. That condition will not be a problem, Mr. Black, Schmidt agreed quickly. I suppose that we should discuss payment before you begin. If you like, Harry shrugged. We will deposit a sum of 1,200 ducats into the account of your choice for your work. Is that sum sufficient? Yes. Harry nodded, wondering what a ducat was. Which bank would you prefer us to deposit your payment into? Harry hesitated, not wanting to give the man his real name. Seeing Harry's hesitation, Schmidt was quick to offer a solution. If you like, we would be happy to arrange a new private account with the gnomes. Sure. Harry agreed quickly. Just give me the account information later. Walk this way then. Schmidt led Harry through several hallways until the two of them stood before a large statue. We just need you to check the repairs that were made to the center of the wards around the quay. They were damaged by the vandal along with Pieta, and I would like to ensure that the repairs were not tampered with. Can I see the schematics? Harry held out his hand for the map of the wards. Of course, Schmidt agreed, handing over the document. Harry spent several minutes examining both the plan and the actual wards. Everything seems to be in order except... Except what? Schmidt asked nervously. The newer sections are a different color than the rest of the wards. Harry squinted at the plans. The plans don't say anything about it one way or another, but if I were you, I would get them looked at. Thank you, Mr. Black, we will, agreed Schmidt. Would you like a tour of the grounds before you go? I would, Harry smiled. I can't wait to see some of the things that I heard were housed here. Schmidt proved to be a very knowledgeable tour guide, often providing bits of trivia to accompany his lectures about a piece's history, and by the end of the tour, Harry had a rather large grin on his face. It seems that we have reached the exit, Mr. Black. Schmidt smiled. Do you have any more questions? Just one. Harry nodded. Who is the second man in your story about the stone? The second man? Schmidt paused to think. The man with great ability. He was the same man that designed my uniform. Thank you. Harry nodded politely, silently doubting the artistic ability of any man who would design a uniform like the one being worn by his new friend. And goodbye. Goodbye, Mr. Black. With that, Harry stepped out to explore the streets of the Eternal City, intent on seeing everything that Rome had to offer, for about 5 minutes. Then he realized how tired he was from checking out the wards. Raising his hand to hail a cab, he decided to get a day or two of rest before setting out to see the city's sights. Harry awoke late the next day and ate an early lunch in the hotel lobby. Walking back to his room, he decided to put off his exploration of the city in favor of resting another day. Waking late the next morning, Harry decided that he had spent enough time laying around and pulled out his book to get instructions on how to enter Rome's magical districts. One of the most accessible magical districts is the Via Veneficus. This district can be reached from nearly anywhere in Rome. To enter, one must find a 3-way crossroads. After a few moments, a 4th road will appear. Many of these entrances in the Old City are also marked with a statue or image of trivia, a 3-headed woman, one of a dog, one of a snake, and one of a horse. Returning his guidebook to its section of his pack, Harry walked out of his hotel to find the nearest entrance, which happened to be less than 20 meters from his hotel. Shrugging his shoulders, Harry entered Rome's magical section and ended up facing a shop named Curios and Relics. Unable to contain his curiosity, Harry entered the shop. Good afternoon, sir. How may I help you? The shopkeep looked up from behind the counter. I saw the sign, and I was wondering what you sold here. Harry looked around the dim space, noting what appeared to be farming implements, oddly shaped trumpets, and other items that he couldn't identify. I sell all kinds of different things. The shopkeep rummaged around behind the counter. I do have one thing that I think will draw your interest. What's that? A Pugio. The man pulled out an oddly shaped dagger. It's an interesting little item that I picked up some time ago. It carried charms to remain ever sharp, ever new, and to remain unnoticed so long as it sits on your hip. I believe it would be a good thing for you to buy. How much? Harry asked, eyeing the odd-looking dagger. I paid about 50 sesterces for it, so I suppose I could sell it to you for, say, 2 aureus? Deal. Harry nodded, handing over a few golden coins. Have a nice day. You as well, sir. The shopkeeper nodded back. Walking out of the store, Harry spent several minutes walking through the marketplace until an odd conversation drew his attention. Did you hear about the British ministers? A fishmonger commented to one of his customers, says he's gonna explain why his government hasn't done anything about that Dark Lord. Wants to drop a few excuses as to why they shouldn't throw him out. I doubt he has anything to say, but it might be interesting to hear it. The customer replied, It's too bad I don't have time to go home and turn on the wireless. You don't have to go home. The fishmonger waved off his customer's objections. Just go into one of the bars around here. Most of them will be playing the speech. Harry nodded to himself. That seemed like a good idea. Walking towards the nearest drinking establishment, he took one look around and walked in. Glancing around the darkened, smoke-filled room, Harry walked towards the nearest empty seat. Mind if I sit here? Harry asked, gesturing to an empty seat next to an old man. I'd like to hear what Fudge has to say. If you like. The old man gave a slight nod. The two of them listened for a few moments as the voice of the wizard wireless reported Fudge's announcement. The only reason that the forces of the ministry had not yet triumphed was because organized crime had joined the cause of he who must not be named, causing his ranks to swell and forcing the ministry's forces to suffer a temporary setback. What do you think of the English minister's announcement, Mr. Black? I think the man's an idiot. Harry shook his head, not noticing the shocked look on the old man's face as he signaled the bartender to bring him a drink. From what I understand, the people that control magical organized crime are much too intelligent to join the Dark Moron. What makes you say that? The old man leaned forward in interest. The activities of the magical syndicates tend to be non-violent. Their business is making money, and killing people for no reason doesn't make a lot of money. Harry took a sip of his newly arrived drink. What deaths do occur are usually criminals killing criminals. Why wouldn't they join the Dark Lord for the money and power he could offer? As I said before, most of the deaths that occur are criminals killing criminals. Law enforcement doesn't tend to worry about that sort of thing. If they were to start bothering innocent people, Harry's voice became cold. Then I suspect that the kid gloves would come off, and it would be a bloodbath. If they want to join a war, then they will have to be prepared to accept all that war entails. I see. The old man nodded. Thank you for your advice, Mr. Black. Happy to give it. Harry's cheerful mood returned. Now, if you'll excuse me, I really only came in here to hear Fudge's announcement, and since it's over. Of course, the old man nodded. I realize that you must be a very busy man, and as thanks for your advice, please allow me to pay for your drink. Thank you, Harry nodded, and do have a good day. The old man waited until his guest had left the bar before turning to the man next to him. Call the other heads together. We need to have a meeting. What do you want us to do about the guy that just talked to you? You will do nothing, the old man replied quickly. But sir, the thug protested. He insulted you? He did no such thing. The old man took a sip from his glass. In his eyes he was showing mercy and restraint. And I have no wish to see what happens if we don't take his warning to heart. What do you mean, sir? Didn't you hear his name? The old man glanced over. Mr. Black is one of the most dangerous men in Europe, and if he works for the kind of people that I suspect, then even if you manage to kill him... The old man shuddered. But sir, the thug was still a bit confused. Why are you taking things so seriously? Because I listened to what he had to say. The old man sighed. As I said, in his eyes he was showing mercy. He took the time to come in here and inform me of the new rules that he expects us to follow. Don't join the Dark Lord, and don't kill anybody outside the families. He calmly told us what would happen if we did not follow his rules. He could have just wiped us out and started over with whoever took our place. He's really that powerful, sir? The thug was beginning to feel sick as he considered the fact that he had volunteered to go after Mr. Black to teach him a lesson. He walked into this bar, sat next to me, and told me how things were going to be. The old man grinned. Nobody would do something like that unless they had the power to back it up. Outside, several members of the team assigned to watch one of the most powerful men in Italy's underworld were frozen in shock. Tony, you and Agatha follow Black. Antonio, you go report this. The team leader licked his lips. I'll watch the bar. Pandemonium erupted at the headquarters of the Praetorian Guard when a wide-eyed officer arrived and immediately ran to their superior's office. Sir, Antonio banged on the door to the Praefectus Praetorio. Sir, you have to hear this. Come in. A stern gray-haired man with a military bearing opened the door, and this had better be good. Sir, Mr. Black is in Rome. The breathless officer rushed out. And why did this cause you to go banging on the door of my office like that? The Praefectus Praetorio asked with false calm. Because he walked into Alberto Nicelli's bar and told him that if he didn't obey a few rules, then there would be a bloodbath. What did Nicelli do? He thanked Mr. Black for the advice and called a meeting of the families. Antonio's hands were shaking. He also told one of his subordinates that they were going to follow Black's orders, said that even if they managed to off Black, that they would still have to deal with the people he works for. Good work, sit down and have something to drink. The Praefectus Praetorio stuck his head out of his office, get a dozen men to back up the group watching Nicelli's bar, and call in all off-duty officers. Yes, sir. Several voices replied as the men rushed to follow their commander's instructions. Now, the Praefectus Praetorio closed the door of his office and looked at his man. Tell me everything that happened. Yes, sir. Black walked into the bar and sat next to Nicelli. They listened to Fudge's speech for a little while, and Black said that Fudge was an idiot when it got to the part where Fudge said that the Mafia had joined up with the Dark Lord. The man paused to catch his breath. Black said that if that happened then there would be a bloodbath, said that so long as the Mafia focused on making money and confined its killings to other members of the families, then he would leave them alone. How did Nicelli react? He thanked Black and paid for his drink. Antonio shook his head. One of his men wanted to go after Black, but Nicelli stopped him, said that Black was trying to show mercy by laying down the rules and that he could have just killed them all as an object lesson to the next group. Good work. Get to the break room and take a few hours for yourself. Sir, if it's all right, I'd rather go back to my post. Antonio licked his lips nervously. The captain is still there, and I'd rather not leave him alone. I understand. The Praefectus Praetorio nodded. Go. Thank you, sir. Antonio called out over his shoulder as he ran to the nearest apparition point. Sir. Another man ran up. I need to talk to you about something. Make it quick, Fulcini, the Praefectus Praetorio growled. We're in the middle of something here. I just spoke to Gunter Schmidt about the wards. Fulcini was bursting with excitement. The man they hired to check our work said that the colors were different between the old sections and the new sections. So Mage Sight is normally in black and white. Fulcini replied quickly. The ability to see color indicates that the man they hired did something unbelievably dangerous to get that ability. Why is this so important? The Praefectus Praetorio rubbed his eyes. I don't see why this couldn't wait until after we dealt with this latest crisis Black dropped into our laps. Because Fulcini smiled. The name of the man they hired was Mr. Black. Tell me everything. They met with Black, and he told them that he didn't know much about wards, so they pulled one of the books out of the archives and gave it to him to brush up. Could be that he just wanted to get a peek at that book, the Praefectus Praetorio mused to himself. Or it could be that by his standards he doesn't know much. Continue. He spent a few hours flipping through the book, and a few more checking the wards. Fulcini checked his notes, then Schmidt took him on a tour of the grounds. Black left after that. When was this? 3 days ago, sir. So we've had Black wandering around my city doing God knows what for 2 days. The Praefectus Praetorio forced himself to calm. See if you can find out what he did. Check the files to see if anything strange happened and report to me when I get back. 9. Can the bad guy fly? "Get the French and Dutch on the fire," the Prefectus Praetori yelled as he entered the room. "Tell them I want to share some information about Black. Set it up as a conference call if you can." "Yes, sir." Several voices called out as handfuls of flow were tossed into fireplaces. "We've got them, sir." "Good." The Prefectus Praetori sat and faced the two figures in the flames. "I need some information, and I am willing to give information. You said you had something to share about Black?" "Hoeft van de Staatsdieners?" San Vermeer asked with a raised eyebrow. "Yes, I do," the Prefectus Praetori agreed impatiently. "He's in my city, and he's been running around doing God knows what for the last 2 days, and I want to know what he's capable of." "It might be best for you to tell us what you know so that we can fill in the blanks for you," a shadowed man replied from the French fireplace. "He was hired by the Swiss Guard to check some wards 3 days ago," the Prefectus Praetori answered quickly. "And he made a comment about the new section being a different color than the older sections." "How is that possible?" the shadowed man bit out. "To gain that ability, we knew he was insane, but this, please go on." "Then he spent 2 days doing God knows what." The Prefectus Praetori forced himself to calm. "He popped up again in a bar belonging to one of the heads of the Mafia. He sat down next to the aforementioned head and calmly told him that if the Mafia did not follow a few rules, including not following Dark Lords and confining their killings to other members of the Mafia, then they would all be killed, and that Black would start over with the next group. How did your head take that?" San Vermeer leaned forward to hear the answer. "He thanked Black and paid for his drink." The Prefectus Praetori wiped his brow. He then told his men that attacking Black would be suicide and called a meeting with the other heads. The 2 other heads of magical law enforcement took several seconds to process the new information. "Would you mind telling me what you know about the man?" their Italian colleague asked. "I don't mean to be rude, but I need every second I can get." "We're terribly sorry," the shadowed Frenchman apologized. "But every time we hear something new about the man, it turns out to be more astounding than the last bit of information." "Ms. Vermeer, I believe you had the honor of meeting him first." "Yes, I did," the woman agreed. "He came to Amsterdam and stopped a group of Death Eaters that say they were tracking Harry Potter." She ignored the other two's explanations of surprise. "One of my people later reported that Black had her remove a tracking spell, so it seems likely that Black transferred the spell from Potter to himself. After that, he spotted every tale we assigned, including the ones under invisibility, and according to reports coming from England, he also managed to discover a new species of magical animal without the Watchers noticing. Black came to Paris and also spotted every one of our tales," the Frenchman began. "He also seems to have some sort of undetectable charm or field that alerts him of any intrusion into his room. While he was here, he allowed us to look into his medical history, and aside from a rather long list of past injuries, we found something odd. Black has apparently subjected himself to some sort of process that makes his blood deadly to anyone but himself, and our healers speculate that in addition to making him immune to nearly every toxic substance known to man, that it may have also boosted his natural healing ability. Black has also shown that he has at least some skill in wandless magic." "Is that all?" "I hesitate to add it." The Frenchman paused. "But due to some of the knowledge he showed, many are starting to believe that Black may have been here with the resistance during the Second World War." "Thank you." The Prefectus Praetori gave a rare smile. "I do have to ask why you didn't tell me that Black was coming in my direction, though." "We didn't know." The Frenchman shrugged his shoulders. "Black gave us the slip by taking a portkey to Monte Carlo. It took us a minute to track the portkey and another 35 seconds for the locals to get on the scene, but they lost his trail because of the excitement resulting from a very large win." The Frenchman turned away from the fire and began conversing with an unseen person. "I've just been informed by our colleague in Monte Carlo that the win that distracted his followers was from a bet placed by Mr. Black." He licked his lips. "Further investigation reveals that the table had been charmed by one of the other players, interviews with the croupier revealed that Mr. Black spent several moments staring at the table before placing his bet. Our colleague also says that this investigation was prompted by the size of the win and that the casino has chosen to honor the bet and send it along with a rather substantial reward for fingering the player. The Frenchman turned away from the fire to converse with the unseen person again, who confessed to being part of a much larger ring of cheaters. "Thank you." The Prefectus Praetori shook his head. "I suppose it was too much to hope that we could keep an eye on him if he didn't want to be followed." The other two said their goodbyes, and the head of the Praetorian Guard wished once again that he had taken the retirement that had been offered the year before. "Sir," Falacchini ran towards his commander, "you're not going to believe this." "What is it?" The Prefectus Praetori closed his eyes and waited for the worst. "I think I know what Black was doing in the city." Falacchini was ready to burst with excitement. 2 days ago, Antony Consiglio died, apparently of natural causes. And several of his lieutenants died on the way to pay their respects in what we thought was an accident. "You're saying Black killed them?" "It all came together when I heard about Black's conversation with the head of one of the families." Falacchini was shaking in excitement. Tony Consiglio would have never followed Black's rules, and it's likely his lieutenants would have followed their boss's lead even after death. "Sounds reasonable." The Prefectus Praetori nodded. "What do you suppose will happen when Consiglio's son figures this out?" "So you're saying that you think this man killed my father?" A middle-aged man, wearing an expensive set of clothing, asked with a raised eyebrow. "It looks that way, yes." Another man in another set of expensive set of clothes agreed. "What do you want us to do?" "Grab another man," the middle-aged man replied. "Then the 3 of us are going to this black fellow's hotel room, and then we're going to show the world why they don't mess with the Consiglio family." "I'll arrange it, Mr. Consiglio," the second man agreed. "When do you want to do this?" "As soon as possible," Giovanni Consiglio replied quickly. "Then why don't we just use your driver?" the second man asked with a raised eyebrow. "He's big and knows how to keep his mouth shut." "Call him. I don't want Black to spend any more time above ground than necessary," Consiglio finished with a cold sneer. The driver was summoned, and in less than an hour the 3 of them were standing in front of Harry's hotel room. "Kick down the door. I want to surprise this bastard," Consiglio ordered coldly, "and when the time comes I want to take this guy out myself." "You got it, boss," the driver agreed as he brought his massive foot crashing into the door. "Black, I'm going rip out your heart, you bastard," Consiglio cried as he rushed into the room. Harry looked up from his book at the man who had burst into his room. Dodging the man's first spell, Harry drew his wand and threw a few reductos at his mysterious attacker. How could anyone be that fast? Consiglio cursed to himself as Black seemed to disappear and reappear out of the path of his curses. "Stand still and die, you bastard." Diving for cover behind one of the couches in his room, Harry took a bit of time to think. "Accio, crazy man," Consiglio screamed as he felt himself get thrown past his attacker and towards one of the windows that had been cracked in the early stages of the duel. Calling out a stereotypical "Enolo," as he flew through the window, he barely had time to realize what a bad idea going after Mr. Black had been before his body hit the street below. "Boss," the second man called, rushing towards their target. Turning towards the nearest threat and raising his wand, Harry's quick reducto reduced the man's wand to splinters, but did little to stop the charge, and before Harry had a chance to mutter another quick spell, he found himself encircled by the man's powerful arms as they attempted to squeeze the life out of his body. As the edges of his vision began to go black, Harry attempted to break the man's grip and all seemed lost until one of his hands brushed against the polished bone handle of his new Pugio. Yanking the knife out of its scabbard, Harry plunged it into his attacker's stomach and brutally twisted it when the man's grip lessened enough to grant him the freedom of movement to do so. His head then swiveled to regard the third man, the last man, standing in the door. The driver stood frozen, too frightened to even scream, as the blood-covered figure turned its head to watch him. The two of them stood, staring at each other for untold minutes until the blood-covered figure took its first step forward towards its next victim. Giving a strangled cry, the driver turned and began running away, hoping that speed and distance would be enough to save his life from the monster behind him. Passing the elevators in a dead sprint, he flung open the door to the stairwell. Harry slowly lowered his wand and dagger after the third man had left and took a slow look around the room. Absent-mindedly casting a few reparos to fix the broken furniture, he sat down on the now undamaged couch and tried to figure out why these things always seemed to happen to him. If there was one thing that the team assigned to watch Mr. Black was good at, it was surveillance. They had honed their skills through years of playing cat and mouse with the family, and they had frantically called for backup when they noticed Giovanni Consiglio walk into Black's hotel along with two of his thugs. A team of 8 wizards arrived just in time to see a screaming man hit the street. Shoulders dropping and fearing the worst, they approached the body to get their first look at the man they had failed to save. "That's Giovanni Consiglio," one of the surveillance team cried out in shock. "Look at his finger. He's wearing his father's ring." "Then we might not be too late to help Black," the leader of the strike team replied quickly. "Alpha team up the stairs. Bravo in the elevators." "Sir," the two teams called out as they entered the hotel at a dead run. Alpha team bounded up the stairwell, freezing when they discovered another body at the bottom of a flight of stairs. Consiglio's driver, another member of the surveillance team that was accompanying them, identified the body. "Looks like he was thrown down the staircase." Pausing only long enough to ensure that the man was dead, they continued up the stairs to link up with the other team. "On 3, the leader of the strike team whispered to his men after they had stacked on the ruined door. 1, 2, 3. The team rushed into the room and froze at the scene that awaited them. "Is there something that I can help you gentlemen with?" Harry asked the latest group of intruders calmly. "Mr. Black," the team leader asked slowly, his eyes refusing to move from the bloody corpse on the ground to his front. "Yes." Harry was having a hard time keeping himself from giggling. "What can I do for you? Do you require any medical assistance?" the team leader asked nervously. "Or any other kind of assistance?" "No, thank you." Harry shook his head. "But I suppose that you want me to come to the station to talk with you." "I think that we might want that," the team leader agreed. "Is that all right with you?" "Of course it is," Harry nodded. "Then would you mind lowering your weapons?" the team leader asked slowly. "They make my men a bit nervous." "Sorry about that." Harry carefully wiped the blade clean his shirt sleeve, then replaced in its scabbard and his wand in its holster. With all the excitement, it slipped my mind. Harry suppressed another giggle. "Would you mind stepping outside then?" the team leader motioned towards the door, "so that we can start collecting evidence." "I don't mind that at all," Harry agreed. "Do you mind if I grab my things first?" The team leader hesitated and then took a close look at the expression on Mr. Black's face. "Don't think that will be a problem." "Thank you," Harry nodded. "Won't take but a minute. Angelo, take one man and go report this," the team leader whispered after Black had left the room. "Yes, sir," the man agreed. "Do you know who that is on the ground?" "Salvatore Carrillo." The team leader was again staring at the body. He was until today regarded as being one of the most dangerous men in Italy and the main suspect in the murder of my predecessor. "That's Carrillo?" Angelo asked wide-eyed. "Black gutted him like a fish." "I know that." The team leader fought to keep the impatience out of his voice. "Now go report this." "Sir." Angelo took one more look at the body before disappearing with a pop. He reappeared outside the headquarters of the Praetorian Guard. Rushing into the building, he nearly ran into his commander. "Did you get to Black in time, Angelo?" the Praefectus Praetori asked the breathless man. "Is Black still alive?" "He's alive, sir." Angelo nodded quickly. "And he doesn't have a scratch on him?" So, you arrived in time to protect him from Consiglio and his thugs. No, sir. Angelo shook his head. We arrived in time to see Consiglio hit the street. Tell me everything, the Prefectus Praetori commanded. We got there just in time to see a screaming man hit the street, Angelo began. Black threw Consiglio through a window, and we arrived just in time to see the end of it. While going up the stairs to Black's room, we came upon another body that was identified as being that of Consiglio's driver. And when we got to the room, what is it? We found a man with his stomach ripped open, and Black calmly standing over it with a big grin on his face like he had just won a prize. Angelo took a couple of deep breaths. I wasn't sure why he would be so happy about it until I asked the captain who the dead guy was.
Who?
The Prefectus Praetori demanded. Salvatore Carrillo. 10. All I wanted was some peace and quiet. Decided to cut 9 where it is and start 10. This is what I have so far. Don't think I'll be doing much more tonight. May I take a look at your knife, sir? The strike team leader asked politely. Of course, Harry nodded, handing it over handle first. This is a very interesting knife, the team leader commented. Would you mind giving me your statement? Not at all, Harry replied, starting to calm down a bit. I was in my room and 3 men rushed in. I dueled the first a bit before he ended up going through the window. The second one grabbed me, and I'm afraid that I had to cut him up, and the third one ran out the door. Thank you for your time, sir. The team leader nodded, closing his book. We may have to ask you a few questions later to clarify a few things after forensics gets their report in. Not a problem. Harry waved it off. Mind if we go downstairs? I feel that it may be time to check out of this hotel. Not at all, sir, the leader nodded. But I'm afraid that I'll have to accompany you until I get authorization to let you go. I understand. Harry gave a short nod. You do what you have to do. The two of them walked down the hall towards the elevators and past the body of the driver that had been brought up and placed beside the others. Shame he had to die, Harry mumbled to himself after he noticed the body of the driver. I was going to let him go. Any response that the team leader may have made was cut off by the arrival of another man. Message from the Praetori. What is it? The team leader asked calmly. He says that Black is free to go if this looks like it was self-defense. What he had actually said was, get him out of my city. But the messenger saw no need to annoy the wizard that had swatted Salvatore Carrillo like a fly. I do. The team leader gave a quick nod. You're free to go, Mr. Black. May I ask where you're going next? Switzerland sounds nice, Harry mused. Wherever it is, I hope it's quieter than my vacation's been so far. Have a good day, Mr. Black. The team leader watched in awe as the most dangerous man he had ever met calmly walked out of the building. Harry resisted the urge to scream as he walked towards the entrance to Magical Rome. Why did these things keep happening to him? Was there some sort of curse on the Potter line that nobody had told him about? Sighing in frustration, he entered the magical section of Rome and paused in front of the small bar that he had previously visited. He really needed a drink right now. After that, he could find a way to get to Switzerland. Good evening, Mr. Black. The old man from before nodded and motioned towards an empty seat. I trust that you're doing well? I wish that were true, Harry shrugged. Unfortunately, I've had a rather bad day. What happened? The old man motioned for the bartender to bring over a drink. I was attacked by 3 men in my hotel room. Harry took a sip of the newly arrived drink. And things got a little violent. You weren't hurt, were you? No. Harry shook his head. Not a scratch. I see. The old man licked his lips nervously. What do you intend to do about the situation? The way I see things, it's best to forget the whole situation ever happened. Harry finished his drink and stood up, and hoped that nothing like this ever happens again. I'm sure that it won't, Mr. Black. The relief on the old man's face was plainly visible. Have a good day, Mr. Black. Thank you. Harry tossed a few coins on the table. It's only polite to let me pay this time, after all you paid the last time. Goodbye, Mr. Black, the old man called out to Harry as he walked out the door. And have a pleasant trip. Harry spent several minutes walking around the alley before he found a small shop advertising that it had the cheapest international portkeys in Rome. Hellos, Harry called out as he entered the apparently deserted shop. Is anyone here?
What?
A head poked through a doorway that presumably led to a back room. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't expect you to arrive for another few minutes. You'll be wanting a portkey then? Yes, Harry confirmed. To Switzerland? Then I'll need to see your passport. The man held out his hand. After all, you'll be crossing a border. One moment. Harry dug around his pockets and handed his papers over to the shopkeeper. The man pulled out his wand and tapped the passport. If that's what you need, Harry took back his passport. What did you mean when you said that you expected me? Thank you, and here you are. The man interrupted Harry and handed over Harry's passport along with a keychain bearing the Swiss flag. Thank you. Harry accepted the two items. How much do I owe you? It has already been paid for by the Praefectus Praetori. The man smiled. He had his men go to every travel shop in Rome and tell them that any international portkey you bought would be at his expense, and that he would pay double the list price if we were able to get you out within the hour. That was nice of him. Harry smiled. Now about that question I wanted to ask. I'm afraid we won't have time for that, Harry. The man gave an apologetic smile. You see, I really wanted to get paid double, and to do that you portkey will have to leave right about now. Harry felt a pull behind his navel, and the world began to spin. Welcome to Switzerland, a jolly-looking man said with a smile. May I see your papers, please? Sure. Harry handed over his passport and fought to wipe the look of annoyance off his face. Damn shopkeeper. I trust that you've had a good day, mister. The customs agent glanced down at the passport. Black. It's been a bit rough, but I have high hopes that things will quiet down. I see. The customs agent seemed to be unable to pull his eyes away from the small document. Was there something you needed? Harry asked, getting a bit worried about the man's odd behavior. No, sir, the customs agent answered quietly. I just didn't expect that I would ever meet you. Just check in with magical law enforcement while you're here. They've got a few messages that they'd like to pass along, and I also believe that some of them would like to chat with you over a beer if you have time. Thank you. Harry nodded. Do you have any suggestions on where I might find a good place to stay? There is an information desk right outside. The customs agent motioned towards the door. If you don't have anything else that you'd like to ask me, have a good day. Harry nodded and walked towards the exit. You as well, Mr. Black. The customs agent closed his line and waited until Mr. Black had walked through the exit. Then he quickly walked towards his supervisor. Mr. Black was just in my line. Did you tell him to get in contact with the police, eh? Yes, the agent nodded. He asked if there was anywhere that we wanted him to stay, and I pointed him towards the information desk. Good job. The supervisor noted the time in his notebook. Out of curiosity, I have to ask, what was his first name? Mr. The customs agent shrugged. When I looked, that was the only thing in the section. I see. The supervisor spent a few minutes thinking. Go wait in the break room. I've got to go report this. We've found out what happened to Mr. Black, sir. The thug that had earlier offered to teach Mr. Black a lesson told his boss, Alberto Nicelli, nervously. Well, Black was attacked by Giovanni Consiglio, Salvatore Carrillo, and Consiglio's driver in his hotel room. Black tossed Consiglio through a window, spilled Carrillo's guts on the floor, and pushed the driver down a staircase. The man hesitated. Go on. The rest of this comes from my cousin Tony, the one who works in that bar the cops like to go to. On seeing his boss's nod, the man continued. They're saying that Black killed old man Consiglio, and that he also staged the accident that wiped out Consiglio's men. One of them even swears that Black muttered something about how he was going to let Giovanni live, and that it was a shame that he didn't get the hint and leave things alone. They also think that he was sitting in his hotel room, out in the open to see if anyone decided to come after him. Thank you, Alberto, Nicelli nodded. And remind me to thank your cousin for the information. It helped bring things into focus. How, sirs? Black said something when he paid for my drink. The old man leaned back in his chair. He said that he wasn't going to retaliate and that it was only fair that he paid for this one, since we paid for the last one. I thought that he was talking about the drinks, but now I'm not so sure. What do you mean, boss? It now looks like something happened to bring us to Black's attention. So he killed Consiglio and several of his men and set out some new rules to make us pay for annoying him. The old man smiled. For some reason, he let Consiglio's son live, so when Consiglio's son tried to kill him, Black decided that it was his mistake and not ours. So, when Black said that he would pay for this one, he was talking about the attempt to kill him and not the drinks. What is it? The Prefectus Praetori called out, answering the knock on his door. Black's gone, sir. A man stuck his head in, went to Switzerland. Thank you. The Prefectus Praetori's face broke into a grin. With any luck, he won't come back till after I'm retired. Yes, sir. The man chuckled as he left the office. What was it you were going to say before we were interrupted? The Prefectus Praetori turned back to the team leader that had been sent to help Black. I was going to tell you about Black's knife, sir. The man paused. It was very unusual, and I thought that it would be best to tell you about it.
Well,
it was a Roman-style Pugio with a bone handle. The enchantments were rather old and done in the same way that the Romans commonly used, which leads me to believe that it's not a replica. The blade was made out of an odd bluish metal, and it had a word inscribed on it. What word? Atrum. The team leader swallowed nervously, which can be translated to Black according to what I remember from my Latin classes. You're not suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything, sir. I'm just reporting the facts as I have them. As Harry walked the information desk with a plan began to form on how to spend his first day in Switzerland. He was going to get 5 pounds of Swiss chocolate, a large hotel room, and then he was going to let fate decide what happened next. Good evening, sir. The girl at the information desk smiled when she noticed him approach. What can I do for you today? I need a room, Harry smiled. Preferably as large and luxurious as possible. One moment, sir. The girl ducked behind her counter and came out with a pamphlet. Here you are, large, luxurious, and in a convenient location as well. Thank you. Harry turned and walked away, happy that things were beginning to look up. Behind him, the girl at the information desk smirked. She didn't know who had paid her to put a tracking spell on the pamphlet that she had given to the odd man, and she didn't care. After all, she couldn't live her meager salary without supplementing her income. She wouldn't have cared even if she had known of the source of the money. The amount they were offering to anyone that gave them a way to track the man with the unrecognizable face was just too high to pass up, even if it did mean getting her hands a little dirty. I have some good news, my lord, said a man as he bent to kiss the robes of his disfigured master. A freelancer in Switzerland has managed to plant a tracking charm on Black, and we can track him so long as he has it in his possession. Excellent, the dark figure hissed. Send 15 men to make an example of him. The world needs to learn that the price of defying me. It shall be done, my lord. The pathetic man groveled and began to back out of the room. Would you prefer a room on one of the upper levels or on one of the lower levels, sir? The hotel receptionist asked Harry with a professional smile. I'd like a room as high as possible, Harry smiled. With a balcony if you have it. I like to feel the wind in my hair. Of course, sir, room 1003 on the 10th floor is available, and I am happy to tell you that it has a rather large balcony. The clerk reached under the counter and pulled out a key. Is there anything else we can do for you that would make your stay more pleasant? If it wouldn't be too much trouble, would you mind sending some chocolate up to my room? Harry asked sheepishly. I've heard so much about it, and I'm afraid that I never had a chance to try it before now. I'll have some sent up, and with luck it will arrive at your room about the same time you do." The clerk replied with a grin. "You would be surprised at how many people make that same request when they check in." "Thank you," Harry smiled, taking his room key. "And have a good night." "You as well, Mr. Black," the clerk replied cheerfully. Walking quickly towards one of the elevators, Harry had to resist the urge to shout in joy. He was finally starting the nice, quiet vacation that he had planned on. From now on there would be no Death Eater attacks, muggers with knives, Swiss guardsmen asking him to check wards, crazy men bursting into his hotel room, or anything but peace and quiet. 10th floor, Harry instructed the elevator operator. "Yes, sir." Harry was bouncing with excitement by the time the elevator doors opened. "Thank you, and have a nice day," he called over his shoulder to the elevator operator as he rushed towards his room. "Your chocolate, sir," said a smiling young woman with a large tray from beside Harry's door. "Would you like anything else?" "No, thank you." Harry shook his head. "Just put the chocolate on the bed, and tell me what I owe you." "Compliments of the management, sir." The girl placed the tray on the bed. "We try to keep the customers in the luxury rooms happy." "Thank you." Harry nodded, handing over a small roll of folded bills. "And have a good night." "You as well, sir." The girl gave one last smile and left the room. Grabbing a piece of chocolate, Harry opened the door to the balcony and leaned on the rail. The wind in his hair, the lights of the city. Could his life get any more perfect? Harry watched in shock as several Death Eaters appeared in front of him and then plummet to their deaths. After taking a suspicious sniff of the piece of chocolate that he had been eating, Harry leaned over the rail to look at the pile of broken Death Eaters littering the ground in front of the hotel. Wondering why these things always happened to him, and resisting the urge to cry, Harry turned around and walked sadly back into his hotel room. Local law enforcement would be showing up soon, and it might be a good idea to pack. Thank you for joining us for the first part of Make a Wish by Rorschach's Blot. We've only just scratched the surface of this emotional roller coaster, and there's so much more to come. The choice Harry faces promises to change everything. Stay tuned for the next chapter of his journey. Before we part ways, here are some magical facts you might not know. The idea of magical wishing wells can be traced back to ancient folklore. In the wizarding world, however, their magical properties are far more potent, sometimes even manipulating time itself. The Philosopher's Stone, a key item in the Harry Potter series, is actually based on a real alchemical substance that ancient alchemists believed could grant immortality or turn metals into gold. Fans have speculated that the magical properties of Harry's wand, particularly its connection to Voldemort's, may have influenced some of the events in Make-A-Wish, a fun little Easter egg for those in the know. If Make-A-Wish has already captured your imagination, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps us bring you more magical stories. And with 10 likes and 10 comments, the next part will be out sooner than you think. Be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Until next time, thank you for being part of the Grimoire Audiobooks family. Stay magical, and we'll see you in the next chapter.